Hello, hello, hello. Good morning. We're back. Illinois versus Bradley Yohn. Maybe we'll get another solo cup demonstration today. Who knows? That was the cringiest, most awkward thing ever. I see from the comments it was a big hit. I mean, big hit in the sense that it disgusted everybody. All right, let's get this party started, shall we?
Keck appear for the people. Mr. Yohn is appearing pro se with standby counsel Mr. Nelson. We had left off with the state's case and presentation of evidence yesterday. And so, Mr. Jones, is the state ready to proceed today?
Yes, Your Honor. We anticipate 3 witnesses today, and we anticipate resting after those 3 witnesses are called.
All right. And Mr. Yohn, defense ready to proceed today?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Your Honor, yesterday I informed the court that I would go speak with Ms. Blackledge about her willingness to be interviewed by Mr. Yohn. I brought Ms. Keck with me as well as investigator Shoney because I know that Mr. Yohn expressed some concern about taking me at my word, so I brought a couple other people there. I spoke with Ms. Blackledge, asked her if she would be willing to speak with Mr. Yohn. She indicated that she did not want to speak with him yesterday, but that we could talk with her today, and she may be willing to speak with him today, but she wanted us to come back and talk to her about that. So I'm passing that information along to the defendant here in open court so that he's aware of that. We did not arrange a meeting between them last night because that was the request of Ms. Blackledge. And again, if the court wants to inquire of Ms. Keck was there as well as investigator Shoney.
Well, as an officer of the court, Mr. Jones, I will take you at your word and not inquire beyond that. All right, so we ready for the jurors?
In reference to that, Your Honor, I also, in a sense, received a message through our chirping system, not myself, but through another party that stated she was willing to, but they told her not to.
Well, is Mr. Shoney available?
I do.
Let's see if Mr. Shoney is available. Hello, are you John Shoney?
Yes, sir.
All right, if you'd come forward. And I'm going to go ahead and have the clerk swear you in, Mr. Shoney.
Sound the same testimony you may give in the past for this question of the truth.
You can have a seat over here in the witness stand. Solely on the issue of Ms. Blackledge wanting to either speak with the defendant, Mr. Yohn, or not. Mr. Jones, do you care to inquire?
Thank you. Investigator, for the record, your name is John Shoney. You're an investigator with the Adams County Sheriff's Office. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Yesterday, did I ask you to bring Karen Blackledge to the sheriff's office from the Adams County Jail?
Yes.
And did you do that?
Yes.
Were you in the interview room with myself and Ms. Keck when we inquired of Ms. Blackledge about her willingness to speak with Mr. Yohn?
Yes, sir.
And when we spoke with her, at any point did Ms. Keck or myself or you try to encourage her not to speak with Mr. Yohn?
No, sir.
When we spoke with Ms. Blackledge, did she indicate that she did not want to meet with Mr. Yohn that day, yesterday?
Yes.
And did she indicate she may be willing to meet with him today, but she wanted us to come back and talk with her today at some point to see if she wanted to do that at that point?
Yes, sir.
And it was that the sum and substance of the conversation?
Yes.
That's all the questions I have.
Mr. Yohn, do you have any questions for Mr. Shoney, again, solely upon this issue?
Your Honor, I do not contest that fact. The witness or alleged code
What are you talking about? You just contested it. That's why we did this whole charade.
defendant, she's very unhonest and very iffy. So, I mean, I can't contest an officer's
You have
words.
no questions?
No, sir.
All right, you may step in. Thank you.
No, you don't have
So-
questions.
The court is going to accept the testimony and evidence as presented through Mr. Shoney of what actually occurred last night and reject defendant's statement, which would not be evidence. Now, are we ready for the jurors?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Yohn, you ready for the jurors to be brought in?
Yes, sir.
All right. The bailiff would bring in the jurors, please. Thank you. And for the record, all members of the jury are now present.
Australian
Left off
healthcare.
with the state's presentation of their case, concluding with the questioning of their ninth witness. Mr. Jones or Mrs. Keck, any further witness for the people?
Yes, Your Honor. People would call Haley Carls Miller.
All right. We
He's
can
trying to
have the
create
witness step in
reasonable
the
doubt.
courtroom,
He's just doing
please.
such a poor job. It's hard to see. It's kind of like saying, what did that 4-year-old just draw? I mean, they intended to draw something. But only mom can decipher it, you know?
If you come forward to the clerk and raise your right hand, she'll swear you in.
You solemnly swear the testimony you may give and the cause not pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
You have a seat over here to my right in the witness stand, please. You could pull up close to the microphone so it does amplify your voice. Thank you. Mr. Jones, when you're ready with your questions.
For the record, can you please tell me your name?
My name is Hallie Carls Miller.
And I'm going to have you pull that microphone a little bit closer to you, and we'll try one more time. Can you tell me your name?
Hallie Carls Miller.
Everybody here okay? Thanks. Miss Carls Miller, what do you do for a living?
I work as a forensic scientist at the Illinois State Police Springfield Crime Laboratory.
Specifically, do you have a area of expertise, an area that your focus generally is?
I do.
And what is that?
I specialize in firearms, tool marks, footwear, and tire track identification.
In order to work for the Illinois State Police in that capacity, did you have to go through any specialized training or education?
Yes, I did.
And can you tell me briefly about that education and training that you completed?
I received a bachelor's from Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville in biology with a minor in forensics. And then I started with the Illinois State Police. They did an in-house training program that consisted of readings, lectures, tours of manufacturing facilities, and months of supervised casework.
And after these months of supervised casework, is there a proficiency exam that you have to take and pass in order to be certified and to start your employment with the state police?
Yes.
And can you describe for us that proficiency exam?
I get proficiency tested in each area I'm trained in. It happens once a year, and I've passed all of those.
And to pass those proficiency exams, is it true that you have to pass with 100% of proficiency? You can't miss any questions. You have to get them all right in order to pass.
Correct.
And you have to do that every year.
Correct.
And how long have you worked with the Illinois State Police?
I started as assigned to the Springfield Laboratory in August of 2016.
So in the last, do the math, seven years, you've passed every proficiency exam 100% every time. You've gotten every answer on those tests right.
Yes, I have.
Your Honor, at this point, we'd ask that Miss Carls Miller be certified as an expert in the area of footwear impressions.
Any objection, Mr. Young?
And an apple
No,
polish.
sir.
I will also certify this witness as an expert in the area of footwear impression without objection by defense.
Ms. Carls Miller, when we talk about footwear or shoe print impressions, can you tell us what we are talking about?
Footwear impressions are impressions left at a potential crime scene when the shoe comes in contact with a surface.
And when that shoe comes in contact with the surface, it leaves a mark?
Yes, it may. It could be a 2D or 3D impression depending on the substrate that the shoe is stepped on.
How do you use that impression that's left to make an identification?
So what I would do is either I receive a gel lift or an image or a cast, depending on the case, of the impression left at the scene or impressions. And I would make test impressions of the shoe or shoes that I received in the case and compare the test impressions to the evidence impressions I received from the case.
Now, Ms. Carlsmiller, every shoe that comes from the factory, if you have a Nike, every Nike shoe is going to have the same sole, right? So how are you able to make a comparison?
When the shoes are released from the manufacturing facility and before they are worn, they are all the same. The outsole pattern, depending on the make, model, and shoe and size, but there is no damage to the shoe. They are fresh and clean. But as the shoes are being worn by individuals, these shoes can pick up damage, wear, as well as like rocks, glass, different like things that can be fit within the outsole that make the shoe individual in nature.
So are you looking for those markings that make that outsole, that sole pattern that's left on the floor, on the door at the crime scene, individualized? That's what you're looking for.
And that's what she should do.
Correct. I'm looking for the class characteristics, outsole pattern, shape, and design, as well as then looking further at the individual characteristics or the cuts, nicks that are within the impression.
And in order to make an identification, you compare that print, if you will, to the shoe that you're given, and you look for those different class characteristics. You look for those different nicks, cuts, things like that, and you're able to make a determination to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty.
Yes, based on my training and experience, I look class characteristics first, and if they agree, then I look further at those individual characteristics.
And you say class characteristics. Can you tell us what you mean by class characteristics?
So these attributes are determined prior to the manufacturing of this shoe. So for example, Nike might have an idea of what they're going to make, what the outsole will look like before they produce the shoe. And those attributes are used to group or include or exclude different impressions from each other.
So let's say, for example, you have a shoe print at the scene, and you look at the shoe print at the scene, and it's a size 12 or something like that. I wear size 16 shoes. If you're given a pair of my shoes, you would be able to say, we don't have to go any further. Those are clearly not the same size.
Correct. If the outsole pattern, size, or design is different enough, then it is an elimination on class.
And then you would go, if they do appear to be the same size, then you would look for the tread pattern or another class characteristic to see if you should go any further.
Correct. I would then look further if the class characteristics agree, and then look for those little nicks, cuts, wear, damage on the outsole and see if it reproduces in the impression found at the scene.
In this case, were you given a pair of shoes at some point and also given some shoe prints from a crime scene?
Yes, I was.
Pull up the shoes.
On the screen, we have People's Exhibit 65 showing the defendant wearing a pair of
White shoes. Were you in fact given a pair of white Reebok shoes, a size 12, for you to compare with some gel lifts?
Yes, I was.
And I'm showing you in March's People's Exhibit 14. Does this appear to be a bag containing those shoes?
Yes, it appears to be.
And it says on the front, one sealed brown paper bag containing one set of shoes, white, size 12, Reebok men's shoes, worn by Yohn at the time of his arrest. Does that sound like the shoes that you examined?
Yes, I would look at the case number and item number.
If I could have the bailiff approach the witness with.
Yes, these are the shoes I received in the Adams County Sheriff's case.
The next slide, please.
on the screen is People's Exhibit 66. And if you go to the next slide, People's Exhibit 67. These appear to be the outsoles and bottoms of those shoes that you examined.
Yes, they're consistent with what I received.
And you talk with us about class characteristics. First of all, you were talking about the size of the shoes, correct?
Size is one of the class characteristics, as well as like the detail, how there's hexagonal shapes as what he's pointing to in the arcs and the Reeboks, these are all class characteristics that if you were to put another shoe up that has like lug characteristics, they are different from what I.
So if you had a shoe print that had straight lines going up and down, not these hexagonal patterns or Reebok and the other shapes, you could say they're not the same. They don't have the same class characteristics.
Correct. They would have to line up with what I received in the case.
And if the gel print does line up, or the shoe print does line up, then you would want to go to the next step of looking for those individualized pictures.
Correct.
Next slide. You were also given some photographs, DVD, along with 6 footwear impressions recovered from the scene. And again, as we said, 1 DVD with raw and JPEG images. Is that correct?
Yes, 6 gel lifts and a DVD.
If I could have the bailiff touch with people's exhibit number 4.
Yes, this is what I received.
Up on the screen now, we have people's exhibit 38 showing 3 sets of footprints. Is that correct?
I didn't really look at these images because they were more crime scene photos and they don't have a ruler in them.
Oh, damn it. I just gave the charges. This is a carjacking, home invasion, sexual assault, nasty case. That's what we're dealing with here. Kicking off with an early mute.
So those were not necessarily my focus. I need a clear picture of a footwear impression like so I can then verify that what I'm seeing is one-to-one is in person.
So when we talk this photograph with the slide or the scale on there, that's one, correct?
It would be one I focus on, yes.
Well, thank you.
And again, you talked about class characteristics where you see the hexagonal patterns, the wave pattern at top, the wave pattern at the bottom, and the word Reebok at the bottom, correct?
Correct, those are class characteristics.
And next slide, please. When we talked about gel prints, this would be a photograph of one of those gel prints you looked at, correct?
Yes, a photograph of the gel lift. Yep.
And again, we talked about class characteristics, the hexagonal pattern, the wave pattern at the top, the wave pattern at the bottom, the word Reebok, correct?
Correct.
And again, also class characteristics, the size. They appear to be the same size as the shoes in People's 14 that were taken from the defendant, correct?
Yes, after I printed the images and made test impressions of the shoes, I basically have a light box that I will place them on top of each other to make my comparisons, and it was all consistent in shape and size.
And People's Exhibit 72, gel lift, and tint marker 8, but for your lab report, I believe it was 5-5-1. Is that correct?
Correct. The gel lift I labeled 5-5, but the impression itself, there was one impression visible on this gel lift, and I labeled it 5-5-1.
And again, we talked about class characteristics being
Prosecutors, both of them have been excellent.
The gel print, it matched the size of People's Exhibit 14.
Yes, consistent in shape and size.
And we talked about other class characteristics, the wave pattern, the hexagonal patterns in the midsole, the wave pattern at the end, the word Reebok at the heel of that shoe, correct?
Correct.
And those all match the shoes that the defendant was found wearing as well, correct?
Yes, consistent in shape and size.
Now, once you did that, at that point, did you look at tint marker 8, your 5-5-1, that gel print, to go further for those specific markers so that you could make a determination that they were, in fact, the same shoe?
Correct. I used the printed images of the 5-5-1 and compared it to the right shoe test impression I made at the laboratory.
And when you compared that gel lift to People's Exhibit 14, what did you find?
I determined that the impression in 5-5-1 was made by the shoe in item number 6 of DFS 2140630.
You made that determination to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty.
Yes, it's based on my training and experience as a forensic
I think
scientist.
you're kidding.
Training experience that you showed through your proficiency exams for the last 7 years where you got everything right on every exam.
This is
correct?
recorded.
Correct.
You also looked at the
Very
Other-
few courts open on Sunday.
gel prints and determined that they were consistent with being made by the same shoe, correct?
I determined they have a consistent outsole size, shape, and patterns. But since I made an ID in this case to the pair of shoes, further examination was deferred, and that is a policy that we do at the Illinois State Police.
Once you find one print that matches, one can assume that the other prints would also match, fair to say?
Well, once the shoe is tied to the scene and an identification is made, then there is no further work that needs to be done.
Thank you, ma'am. That's all the questions I have.
Mr. Yohn, any questions?
Yes, Ms. Miller, if I may, what are the standard size rulers y'all use in your profession? As I believe they're black rulers, but they do not show.
Oh, here we go.
They do show an inch range. I pulled up a picture
What are the standard size rulers y'all use? Strong start.
here.
Judge, I have to object at this point. Is there a question?
Mr. Yohn, if you would ask the witness questions, please.
Ms. Miller, you're positive that these were 12-inch size shoes rather than potentially 11 inches?
I look at the size of the shoe based on the tag that is on both shoes.
And your determination was that they were size 12, correct?
They were size 12 Reebok athletic shoes.
And you used a ruler to measure them when you did your analyzation, correct?
I did not use a ruler to measure them. I made test impressions using them and compared the test impressions to the impressions that were found on the gel lifts and the DVD.
Oh,
And can you give us a little bit of information concerning the
ready for
rulers
that.
that y'all would use if you were to use one?
The rulers are just, I do not necessarily use the rulers unless you take images, just so if you print the images and say you get the image from, we have a really nice printer with nice color, you would verify that the ruler in the picture is consistent with the ruler that you have in hand, then it's all consistent. It's a 1-to-1 ratio of the shoe image of the impression that you have compared to a test impression that you make at the laboratory.
And through your analyzations, you analyzed the shoe and you talked about class characteristics and marks such as rocks being stuck in the shoes or glass or cuts from just everyday usage, correct?
There are wear and rocks, depending on the case, depending on the shoe, how it was worn, that do appear and cause damage to the shoe.
And if a person wore them shoes naturally every day, or I'll stick with the question at hand, if a person wore them shoes every day and they caused wear to be contributed to them shoes, and at a later time someone else wore them shoes, would you be able to tell the difference through analyzations of the scene picture? Or,
I don't understand the question. I'm sorry.
okay, so I've worn these shoes for 3 days here. I've caused wear on them, let's say, which it hasn't been much, but let's just say I've caused wear on them. And then another person on the 4th day wears them, and that person is, say, 50 pounds lighter than me or 100 pounds heavier than me, and they go and commit a crime. would you be able to tell through the characteristics of the shoe and the gel lifts or pictures taken, could weight or any other characteristic of a person wearing these shoes that was not the original person, could you tell differences in that?
I guess I still don't truly understand the impression. I don't care who wears the shoes in the case. I just receive a pair of shoes and I compare them to an impression found at the scene. And based on the shoes that I received, the right shoe made an impression in the DFS 2140276.
And
So there.
that impression was through a gel lift, right?
The DVD contained images of the impressions before they were gel lifted, and then whoever lifted them then flipped the gel lift over, and there were images, scaled images of the gel lift after.
Let's say it in a way he can understand. Them shoes are your shoes.
And the impressions, did you analyze them gel lifts?
Do you mean like actually the gel lifts I received or the images of the gel lifts?
Yes, the gel lifts.
I did observe them, yes.
And this may help you out a bit better. The weight range, could you, through observing the characteristics of the actual shoe and then observing the gel lifts,
I anticipate a freak out.
is there a way that you could tell the weight of a person who potentially wore them shoes at this time versus a person who normally wears them?
No, I can't tell the difference in that.
It's not possible.
No, I can just look at the wear and damage that the shoes have when I receive them.
So any person could have worn them shoes, correct?
I have no idea who wore the shoes.
But any other person could have worn them, correct?
I do not know who wore the shoes.
It's a possibility.
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
That was a winner.
The shoes that you were given in People's Exhibit 14 left the gel print that you examined in People's Exhibit.
I think he's cracked the case here. With it's possible somebody else wore my shoes. While I was wearing the victim's watch and carrying her purse.
4 that we saw on the screen, correct?
Yes, an impression in 5-5-1 was made by the right shoe.
It is.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Any recross?
No, sir.
Any recuse? Thank you.
Oh, Your Honor, we would ask that Ms. Carlsmiller be released from her subpoena.
Mr. Yohn, you have any intent to recall that witness?
No, sir.
All right, so Ms. Carlsmiller released from the witness subpoena and are free to go. State have any further witness?
Yes, Your Honor, we would call Telly Massajuski.
And have the next witness brought into the courtroom. If you would come forward to the circuit clerk, ma'am. And raise your right hand, she'll swear you in.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you may give and the testimony before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do.
All right, you can have a seat over to my right on the witness stand, please. You could scoot up to the microphone and pull it close to you. They are amplifying microphones. Mr. Jones, are you ready with your questions?
Thank you, Your Honor. Can you tell us your name?
Yes, my name is Kelly Massajuski. The last name is Maciejewski.
Sounds like you've been asked that.
Yes.
What do you do for a living, Ms. Massajuski?
I'm employed at the Illinois State Police Forensic Science Laboratory in Springfield.
Is there a particular area that you specialize in focusing?
Yes, I specialize in the biology and
They
DNA
really are.
area section.
In order to get that job, to have that position, was there some specialized training that you had to receive?
Yes, prior to my employment there, I got my degree in biology and English from Albion College in Albion, Michigan. And then I also got my master's degree in forensic science from the University of Illinois in Chicago. And then upon being hired by the state police, I underwent an approximately 2-year training program that went through the methods and techniques and things that are used specifically in forensic biology and DNA.
After completing that 2-year training process, was there a proficiency exam or an exam that you had to take in order to demonstrate the required knowledge and ability
I doubt it.
receive full-time employment with the state police crime line?
Well, throughout the 2-year training program, there were tests continually during that time that had to be passed and completed in order to move on to the next step in training. But then once the training was completed, I went through what is termed supervised casework, which is where you work cases under the direct supervision of another qualified analyst to ensure that you have mastered the techniques and things like that that are needed to work independently within the section.
And once you receive that position, there's a yearly proficiency test that you have to pass as well. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. We take actually 2 proficiency tests every year that are sent to us by an outside vendor, and where the results are obviously known to them, but not to us. And then we have to complete those tests and issue the proper results to them in order to pass.
And let's be clear, when we say pass, it's not a 70% and you pass. You have to get it's 100%. It's if you don't get everything right, you fail and you're not employed anymore.
Yes, that's correct. I don't know if it would end my employment, but I haven't had to deal with that. So, but yes, that you do have to have 100% on those tests. There's no errors that are permitted.
And for how long have you worked for the Illinois State Police?
Since October of 2001.
So for the last 22 years, you've passed every proficiency test, passed every exam that was required of you with 100%.
Yes, correct.
Your Honor, at this point, we would ask that Ms. Pasajewski be certified as an expert in the area of DNA forensic biology.
Any objection, Mr. Yohn?
No, Your Honor.
All right. The record will so reflect. We'll certify this witness as an expert in the area of DNA.
Let's start with DNA. Can you tell us in a general sense what DNA is?
Yes, DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid, and it is essentially the building block of life. You receive half of your DNA from your mother, half of your DNA from your father, and the majority of our DNA is the same. However, there are some differences amongst the DNA, which is what makes us unique from one another. But the majority, like I said, is the same, which makes us human as compared to any other animal. So we, in forensic DNA, we are looking at, of course, those areas that are different in order to identify samples as having come from a particular individual.
Maybe this is a little simplistic, but there would be a DNA section that would relate to color of eyes. Fair to say?
Yes.
And so somebody who had blue eyes would have one type of DNA in that section, and somebody who had brown eyes would have a different DNA at that section. I know it's very simplistic, but
Yes, that would be correct.
and you're looking when you analyze DNA for these different areas of differences to determine a DNA profile, correct?
Correct. We look at 23 different areas of DNA, and at each of those areas, you will have 2 DNA types, one type which was received from your mother, one type which was received from your father. So at each of those 23 locations, you have those 2 types, which make up your profile at that one area.
Right,
and we have 23 areas. So in combination, you're looking at a comparison of 46 different types that would need to pair up to be a match.
And with the exception of identical twins, no 2 people have the same DNA profile. Is that fair to say?
Yes, that's correct.
With the exception of identical.
With the exception of identical siblings, that's correct.
In this case, let me back up. In a general sense, then how do you do that DNA comparison in a general sense?
Well, we have the DNA profile comes off of the instrumentation, and it looks very similar to like if you've seen like an EKG graph or something like that. It has peaks, and those peaks correspond to DNA types. And so when I get that, I will then look at the DNA types that are present from an unknown sample, or a sample where the source is unknown to me, and then I can compare that to the DNA profile from a standard, which would be collected from a known individual. And then I compare those types to see if they indeed match at each of those locations that I was able to generate results for from the unknown sample.
You compare the unknown sample to the sample where you know where it comes from, and you see if there's a correlation.
Yes.
That unknown sample comes to the lab usually in the form of a swab.
Sometimes it can come in the form of a swab if it is something that was collected by the agency where they have swabbed an item or collected an item. Sometimes the actual item itself is sent to us. Just a general example would be like a soda can, where I would then collect the swab from it myself. It could be an item of clothing where I need to test for blood, so I will identify stains on the item and collect samples from that. So it can vary depending on what it is that we get.
In this case, were there some swabs sent to you from the crime scene and you were asked to do a DNA comparison?
Yes, I received swabs for some items, and then I also received some actual items where I collected the swab.
Specifically, I want to talk first about
Photograph 42. In this case, there was a 409 carpet cleaner can that was sent to the lab for both fingerprint and DNA testing.
Yes, that's correct.
DNA testing, that's what you did. You weren't involved in the fingerprint testing, correct?
Yes, correct.
And that can was tested for DNA, is that right?
Yes, I collected a swab from the top plastic nozzle portion where you would depress to release the contents of the can.
And you took the steps that you took in order to create a DNA profile?
Yes.
Were you able to create a DNA profile?
Yes, I was.
Were you able to compare that DNA profile to a known standard?
Yes.
And based on that comparison, were you able to determine that unknown sample, the DNA from the can, who it came from?
Yes.
And who did that DNA come from on that can?
I had a major DNA profile on that sample, and that major DNA profile matched that of Christine Lohman.
Christina or Tina Loam.
Yes.
I also want to talk about some swabs that were sent to you. In People's Exhibit 81, were you given some swabs from a
Blood stain or red blood-like substance on the floor in the kitchen area?
Yes, I believe it was labeled kitchen/living room.
And did you take those same steps with regard to those swabs?
Yes, I did. I first tested the sample for the presence of blood, and blood was indicated, and then I completed the DNA process on that sample.
You were able to get a DNA profile from that red blood-like substance?
Yes.
And you were able to compare it to a known standard?
Yes, I was.
And what was the results of your testing?
There was a single source DNA profile from that sample, which matched that of Christina Lohman.
Next, ma'am, I would like to talk about some swabs from a door handle of a
safe. Specifically, what we have on the screen now is People's Exhibit 50. Were you given some swabs that were to have come from the door handle
of that safe?
Yes, I was.
And were they tested for DNA as well?
Yes.
When you did that test, what were you able to determine?
On the sample that I was able to generate DNA results from, I had a mixture of two individuals on that sample. One, it was clear to me in comparing to the standards that one of the profiles came from that of Christina Lohman, and therefore I did what I call assuming her profile. And what that means is I look at her DNA types and I remove them from the unknown sample to see what is left over in order to generate what is known as a deduced profile. The deduced profile being anything that is foreign to Christina Lohman. And when I did that, I was able to compare that to the other standards that I had, and Timothy Schmidt was excluded from that, and Bradley Yohn was included as a contributor.
And is there I don't want to say a number, but a degree to which you were able to determine how Bradley Yohn was included in that profile?
Yes, when we have an inclusion like that, we use a statistical program that indicates that that profile would be expected to be found in approximately 1 in 210 unrelated individuals.
So out of 210 people, only one of them would be expected to have that same profile.
Yes, that's approximate. So if you had a group of 210 people, it would be expected that of that group of 210, only one person would have those same DNA types that I was able to deduce out of that sample from the safe handle.
In the course of your, with the lights. In the course of your analysis, were you also given a Depends adult diaper to examine?
I did not actually receive the diaper myself. However, I did receive DNA that had been already taken through the process of the majority of the process of the DNA procedure, and I did testing on that sample.
Now, can you describe for us the testing that you did on that sample?
Yes, I did what is known as YSTR DNA testing on that sample.
Is YSTR testing different than the process that we've previously talked about that was used in the other swabs?
Yes, it is.
And can you describe for us those differences?
Yes. When we are doing DNA profiling, we are looking at all of the DNA generally. So half from your mother, half from your father, as I explained previously, and that will generate a DNA profile. However, in situations where there is an abundance of female DNA present, and we can see that through a quantitation step that we do, which shows us how much DNA we were able to recover, we can see that there's a large amount of female DNA present and a very small amount of male DNA present. And when that happens, doing that standard testing that we perform, the female DNA is going to overpower any of the other male DNA that may be present. And so we have something that we can use, which is called YSTR DNA testing. And that is DNA that focuses specifically on the Y chromosome, which only males have. Females have 2 X chromosomes, 1 X from the mother, 1 X from the father. Males have an X and a Y chromosome. So we can focus on DNA that is only present on the Y chromosome, and it allows us to essentially ignore all of the female DNA that's present in the sample and generate a YSTR DNA profile.
Wait. I think she needs to be properly re-educated about identification.
It's not as discriminating because a Y chromosome is carried, and the DNA along with it is carried through a paternal line. So a father will have the same YSTR profile as any of his sons and the same as any brothers that male may have. So it's not as discriminating, whereas all DNA is unique for individuals. It's not unique for YSTR profiles.
It's unique, but not unique in the sense of the male paternal line.
Correct.
And in this case, that Depends was examined and the female DNA was overwhelming. Fair to say?
Seriously.
Yes, that is correct.
At that point, did our office, and specifically
She acts as if science is more important than your preference on that issue.
myself, contact the Illinois State Police Crime Lab and ask the crime lab to take this additional step of the YSTR testing?
Yes.
And was that done?
Yes, it was.
In this case, after you did that YSTR testing, were you able to find some male DNA?
Yes, I was.
And were you able to compare that male DNA to a DNA profile, specifically the DNA profile of the defendant, Bradley Yohn?
Yes.
And when you did that, were you able to come up with a conclusion?
Yes, I was.
And what was that conclusion?
Bradley Yohn was included as a male contributor in that sample.
And again, much like the last piece of evidence that you talked about, did the computer also generate a degree to which he was associated with that suit?
Yes.
And what was that degree?
That profile would be, it's 310 times more likely that profile came from Bradley Yohn or a paternal relative than from an unknown individual.
The last thing I want to talk to you is the nature of DNA itself. Is DNA a hardy substance, or is it something very delicate?
It can be hardy in terms of when it's on an item. If that item is preserved in a proper way, it can last for a very long time. So I could take a sample from the 1980s if it had been preserved correctly, and I could potentially get DNA from it. However, it can be broken down or degraded. There are certain things that if it's subjected to, it's going to break it apart and it's not going to be able to generate a DNA profile.
So for example, if DNA is sprayed with carpet cleaner, that could very well degrade that DNA to the point where it could not be found.
Yes, there are chemicals that would be present in carpet cleaner that would degrade or break down DNA.
Thank you, ma'am. That's all the questions I have.
Mr. Yohn, any cross?
Yes, most definitely. Give me 1 second, please.
Ms. Masajewski, you stated that essentially every human being has some of the same DNA, correct?
Yes, over 99% of DNA among humans is the same.
Is the same, correct? So everybody here in the courtroom, we all have, and each of us, 99% of our DNA would be the same.
Yes, that is in fact what makes us human as opposed to other animals.
And Mr. Nelson or Mr. Downs here, officer and attorney, our DNAs would be the same, correct?
Yes, at approximately 99% of your DNA.
Okay, and I'd like to touch base just quickly on the few things that Mr. Jones spoke to you about, and then I'd have some other questions for you. You did say definition of DNA, it's the building block of life.
Correct.
It's what makes us.
Yes.
Areas that are different. Could you elaborate on them areas that are different? You said areas are locations.
Yes.
And
Oh, good Lord. We're having more deep thoughts with Yohn here.
you said you look at 23 different locations when you do a test, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And ultimately you'll have, I believe it is 46 something. Could you relay that to us again?
Yes. We look at 23 areas, and at each of those 23 areas, you will have 2 DNA types. So one from your mother, one from your father. So 23 areas times 2, you'd have 46 locations for comparison.
And let me pause real quick. I'd like to ask you what autosomal is.
Yes, autosomal is what I refer to as our standard DNA testing. That's where we look at the areas of DNA where we have the one type from your mother, one type from your father. That would be autosomal DNA testing, as opposed to YSTR testing, where we're just looking at that male chromosome DNA.
And concerning autosomal and YSTR testing, one testing method could, I believe it is a YSTR, determines a specific person, correct?
I'm not sure I understand that question.
I'll get back to that question in a moment. I have it down here in my notes. You said that 409 can, you tested the nozzle. You did a swab of that, correct?
Yes, correct.
And you did that swab yourself?
Yes, I collected the swab myself.
And you said that swab matched Christine Loman, correct?
Yes, I had at least 2 people present on that swab. There was a major contributor, and that matched Christina Lohman. The minor contributors were so low that and potentially more than one person, that it was not suitable for comparisons.
And you, as you just stated, you had 2 assumed contributors.
I had evidence of at least 2 contributors.
Husband and wife live in a home. That could potentially be both of them, correct?
Yes, but because the minor profile was limited and potentially greater than one person, I could not make any comparisons.
Thank you. You did not receive any positives or not excluded for the defendant here on that can.
Yes, on that can, that's correct.
In the stain on the floor, you spoke with Mr. Jones concerning that. You stated that it also matched Miss Christine Lohman, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And not the defendant myself.
Correct.
And did you do multiple testing on that, or was it just one single test?
One, just the standard DNA testing.
And just the standard DNA testing, when you analyze that, does it take time to analyze these things?
Yes, the whole entire process from start to finish. If you were only working an individual sample, it could potentially be done in about a day and a half. But usually I group samples together, and the entire process from start to finish takes about 3 days.
And with that group, there was, I believe, 5 to 6 people, if I may. Myself, the defendant, Bradley Yohn, Karen Blackledge, daughters Ilsa Terrell and Heidi Young, and Mr. Timothy Schmidt, the husband, correct?
I did not have any standards from the daughters. I don't recall the names you just said, but I did not have standards from them.
Okay. And that obviously took some time to review these standards and test them. True.
Yes.
And you still did it as in reference to that stain on the floor. You did not come up with any other DNA other than Christine Lohman's, correct?
Correct. It was a single source profile.
I want to touch base on the swabs of the safe. You obviously didn't take them yourself because you were not at the scene, and that is what is built into a wall. You stated that that DNA was a mix of 2 profiles.
Yes, that is correct.
And you assumed Christine Lohman.
Yes.
That leaves us with 1, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And you come to the conclusion that Mr. Timothy Schmidt, who we have determined is the only one to ever touch that.
Objection, Your Honor. Assumes facts not in evidence.
Sustained.
Your Honor, it was placed in evidence yesterday. This was determined. It was asked through Miss Field.
Your Honor, sustain the objection, so I ask you next question.
You excluded Mr. Timothy Schmidt,
Yes, that is correct.
and that was a complete exclusion. You did have nothing concerning him.
Correct.
And myself, Bradley S. Yohn, was to be a contributor, correct?
Included as a potential contributor, yes.
A potential. And do you remember what Loki that was at?
May I consult my notes?
Yes, you may. Most definitely. Thank you.
Once I assumed out the victim's profile, Christina Lohman, from that sample from the safe, I had information remaining at 4 of the 23 locations that we test for. And at those 4 locations, I was able to then compare to the standards, and Timothy Schmidt was excluded at those locations and Bradley Yohn included.
Was it a definite positive or?
It has to be the exact same type at those 4 locations. And so, yes, at those 4 locations, that type was shared at all 4.
I want to speak on the depends. The depends.
Nobody
You
knows.
stated you did not receive it yourself.
Correct.
However, you tested other samples, other person's samples, correct?
Yeah. I'd like to hear
Yes,
that.
the beginning portion of the DNA process was done by my colleague, Dexter McElhiney, and he completed that process through our standard DNA testing and generated a profile, but it was clear from our quantitation data that there was male DNA present. And that's when I then took the sample that he had, and then I completed YSTR testing on that sample.
And you come with a not excluded for myself.
Yes, that's correct.
If you could, do you have Mr. McElhiney's reports included in your file?
Yes, I do.
Could you review them quickly, please?
Regarding the
Regarding his test, I believe it was number 3.
on that depends specifically?
Yes.
Yes, I'm aware of his results.
And that was to not include the defendant, correct?
Through that process, he had a single source female profile that was from that sample using the standard DNA testing that matched Christina Lohman.
I have the report here myself. It says not, excuse me one moment. Not included, I believe, or
Oh, he
excluded.
sure is.
Excluded, yes.
Brad Yohn, excluded.
Yes.
And that was the first initial test, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Could you point out to the jury and the people here the amount of contributors on his test to the inner and the outer swabs?
The number of contributors, is that what you said?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. He had on the inner swab, which is the one that I then completed YSTR testing after his test, he had a single source female profile that matched that of Christina Lohman. On the outer swab, let me consult my notes and see what that says. For that, it also was one contributor matching that of Christina Lohman.
And that was on both samples. That was the outer waistband, I believe it was, of the depends, and the inner pad.
Yes, that is correct.
I'd like to step over to your report, and that's number 4. That is the testing you did on the depends.
Okay.
And that was also the outer and inner, the same as Mr. McElhiney did,
Yes.
correct?
Mhm.
And can you tell the contributors on them 2 samples?
Yes. The swab from the inner portion of that depends was a mixture of 2 males, and one of the males, in comparison to the standards that I had, appeared to be that of Timothy Schmidt, who I received as an elimination standard. So similar to how I did with the swab from the safe, I was able to remove his DNA types from that sample to see what was left over. And what was left over from that, I was able to then compare to the other standard I had from Bradley Yohn and see that he was included as a contributor or as a potential contributor to that sample, which means it matched at all of the areas I was able to compare.
And would you look at item 1H2 swab of outer waistband in front of disposable depends blood?
Yes.
And the number of contributors there?
Yes.
think I missed
That
the vote
was
on
a
that one.
mixture of at least 5 males from that outer portion of the depends, and that was not suitable for comparisons to standards due to the number of contributors.
And you stated them 5 contributors were males, correct?
Yes, because it's a male-specific test, I know that they are all male, and there is evidence of at least 5 contributors.
5 contributors.
Correct.
I'd like to, since you're here on this test already, I'd like to touch base on 1D1, the sample from fingernail swabs.
Okay.
The right hand, that would
Yes.
be. And could you read that box off for us, please? The number of contributors on down.
Yes, I did YSTR testing on those fingernails as well because there was an indication that there was male DNA present. And I have a single male contributor on that, which matched that of Timothy Schmidt.
And excluded Bradley Yohn.
Correct.
And Mr. McIlhiney, his testing did the same, correct?
May I consult my notes on his report?
ma'am.
Yes, on his, on Dexter McElhiney's report where he did the testing on those fingernails, he had a single female contributor using the standard DNA testing, which matched Christina Lohman. So essentially the female DNA was in such high concentration, it was overpowering the male DNA. And so that is why that sample then moved to YSTR testing.
And it moved to YSTR testing and it only come to the conclusion of Mr. Schmidt, correct?
Correct.
I'd like to step down to, I apologize for jumping around. I'm not the best at this, as you can tell. I'd like to step down to 2A of your report, number 4. It is swab from outside right sleeve of navy blue blouse, I apologize.
Okay.
And can you tell us, shed some light on that test there?
Yes, I did YSTR testing on that sample and I got no YSTR profile.
Okay, and 2B, that's swab from the outside left sleeve of navy blue blouse.
Yes.
And could you tell us the number of contributors and shed some light on that information for us?
Yes, again, I did YSTR testing on that sample and that had at least 1 contributor present. It was in very low concentration and potentially more than 1 person, and that was not suitable for comparisons.
You stated potentially more than 1 person.
Yes.
So it's not for sure. Here on the test, it says number of contributors, at least 1, but it's potential for more.
Yes, there is clear evidence, and I shouldn't say at least 1 person, it's at least 1 male because it was YSTR testing. And so there was clear evidence that there was potentially more than 1 person present, which is why that sample then becomes unsuitable for comparisons.
And after relaying this information here on test 4, that would infer that testing is not absolute, correct?
No, testing is absolute.
It is.
Yes.
The testing method.
Nice try.
Could you explain to the jury and the people here today why the procedure in testing as far as swabbing the cuttings, dividing them up amongst scientists, the reasons for these things?
Yes, YSTR testing is not used It's not used consistently on every single case, and therefore not every analyst is trained in YSTR testing. So in this situation specifically, Dexter McElhiney is not trained in YSTR testing. It's used, like I said, in limited situations on cases. And so when analysts have a sample that is potentially suitable for YSTRs or needs to have YSTR testing conducted on it, then it will be sent to a YSTR analyst, in which I am. So that's why that was divided up in that way. But we also have a large number of cases that come into our lab. Not one individual can work every single case. And so the work gets divided up amongst us, but then sometimes certain things are needed on cases, or things just need to be transferred to another analyst for a variety of reasons.
In reference to that, is it possible that tests are also divided up amongst scientists in order to get a positive insight on such tests, a positive outlook on them?
No, I wouldn't say that would be correct. It's really just a matter of how evidence flows through our system. We all undergo the exact same training, with the exception of, some people are trained in certain tests that others are not, but we all can have the same qualifications and things like that in terms of conducting DNA testing. We are all trained in autosomal DNA testing. It's just that sometimes samples need certain things. We also have analysts that are trained only in bone. Again, we don't do DNA on bone very often, so we only have a few DNA analysts trained in that. So it's just a matter of how things flow and work in the laboratory.
Give me one moment, if you will. That safe handle. That safe handle, based on your professionalism, your standing in your scientific community of DNA, if I were to touch this cup every day,
here we go,
for a week, and I drank from it several times a day, and then it was later tested, and it was touched by another being before it was tested, approximately right before it was tested. What's the chances that myself, the person who has touched this cup every day, their DNA not be on that? What are the chances that their DNA not be there? They be excluded?
I can't really give you a quantitative answer on that. It will depend on what may have happened to that cup in between when it was handled multiple times by you and then before it was handled by the other person. But I can't speculate as to what the chances would be. I mean, if you were to ask me, I would expect to find your profile, but at the same time, I don't know how that cup was handled in the meantime between my testing and you touching it and drinking from it.
Well, let me use the safe for an example. If it was built into the wall and it was not ever washed or regularly washed or sprayed down, then you would still expect my DNA to be there if I was the one to touch that regularly at all times, correct?
I would expect it in general if you handled it many times without use of gloves and things like that.
And without washing?
Correct.
Okay, Ms. Massachuski, if you would give me 1 second. Is it true that autosomal testing, it does point to specific individuals, correct?
Yes, it certainly can. If you have information at all 23 locations, then it can be a very strong association. As you have less and less information, if you're able to obtain less, for example, if you only look at one of those 23 locations, it's not nearly as discriminatory. It'd be similar to if you were going to describe someone in this courtroom and you start with brown hair. Well, that eliminates some people, but not all. But then you add, okay, brown eyes. Well, then you eliminate a few more people. And then if you say, you know, wearing a blue shirt, you eliminate more people. So the more locations you're able to add to a DNA profile, the more discriminating it becomes. So a full 23 location profile, it's a very strong association to an individual. But again, as you lessen the amount on that, it can get a little less discriminatory.
And would you give us some insight on what touch DNA is?
Yes, touch DNA is just simply a matter of trying to find out who may have handled or touched an item. Every time you touch anything, if you have a pen that you use, you leave behind some DNA. You walk up to a counter, you rest your hands on it, you leave behind some DNA. The more it's handled or the more vigorously it's handled, then you'll get more DNA to have been deposited. But essentially that is what touch DNA is just trying to determine who may have handled or touched an item.
Perspiration, skin particles, hair, them would be issues in touch DNA, correct?
Hair would not. Hair is different, but like I said, touch DNA is really just the sloughing off of skin cells and trying to determine who handled or touched that item.
Would you relate to us the variety of techniques you use in your profession concerning touch DNA?
I'm not sure.
Judge, I'm going to object. I'm not sure that's relevant at this point. There's been no evidence of touch DNA.
Let me rephrase this. Let me ask another question.
All right, so we'll sustain the objection if you can ask it or rephrase the question.
The depends bloody. You come to a conclusion to not exclude the defendant, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And that wasn't a sperm DNA finding, was it?
No, I don't believe so. I believe that was just a swab that was collected from the inside of the depends.
Could you review your notes possibly to make sure, or?
Yes, I can see if I have that report. I didn't actually have the depends. I only received the DNA in the tube that was already processed. So
to make it simpler on you, could you determine whether that was touch DNA or sperm, or?
No, like I said, I don't believe there was sperm semen testing done. It would have underwent a different technique in the DNA process if there was sperm present. So I believe that was just a swab for the purpose of seeing if there was touch DNA present.
Would you explain to us what PowerPlex, profiler, co-filer, mini-filer, and identifier are?
Judge, I'm going to object. It's a compound question. He's asked to explain 4 different things.
I'll sustain if you could rephrase the question.
Could you explain to us what identifier is?
Yes, identifier is a previous DNA typing kit that we used to use. We now use PowerPlex 23, which tests 23 locations. Identifier is our previous kit that we used prior to that, which tested 15 locations.
So the most common test used today is PowerPlex 23.
Yes, that is correct.
And I have an important question here for you. Resubmitted. When one resubmits an item, what does that mean?
It just means that the agency has previously brought an item to us that we either looked at or we deferred at that time, and it was sent back to the agency, and then resubmitted is just them bringing that same item of evidence back to us.
And were there any items you resubmitted in this case?
Not that I'm aware of.
One moment, and I'll pull up some information. I have items 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 that were resubmitted by the investigating agency of Adams County on 12/6/21. And then I have 10, 12, 13, 17, 28, and 29 resubmitted. That would mean that these items were brought back to your.
If that's the information you have, I do not have that information with me.
That's case jacket DFS 21-040276. And it is page 2 of 040276. Ms. Masajewski, you're positive you do not have that information with you? Because if I step down to sub number 5, and this was received 3/30/2022, it states that Adams County Sheriff's Office.
Judge, I'm gonna have to object at this point. If he wants to show her the report, that's fine, but he needs to have a copy of the report to show it to the witness or admit it into evidence or something like that. Him reading whatever he's looking at his computer screen is not appropriate.
Your Honor, if I could.
First, I've got to determine I'm sustaining the objection, but if this witness generated that report, then she would be able to review her notes or her reports to find that if you can direct her attention to that. Otherwise, you'll need to provide her with the document you're referencing so that she'll be able to review it and know if she knows anything about it. So you could pull that out and.
Your Honor, if I may, could we take a very, very brief recess? If I could get this document printed off, it would only be approximately 4 pages, I believe. And it has very, very valid reference to item number 8, which is the safe swab handle or the
Very
safe
valid.
handle swab.
We're going to take a brief recess. We've been at it for a while now, and so we'll excuse the jury to the jury assembly room for that brief recess.
Please, Yohn, please rise.
We will indicate for the record that all jurors have returned to the courtroom. We took a brief recess for morning break and the defendant to obtain a printed copy of a report he was referencing. Mr. Yohn, are you ready to continue with your cross-examination?
Yes, sir.
All right, you do so.
Sorry, Ms. Masajewski. We spoke on resubmitted items.
Yes.
And can you state one more time for the record what resubmitted means?
Yes, resubmitted is just when an item has been to the laboratory previously and it is then sent back to the agency and then it is resubmitted or resent back to our laboratory at a later time.
And I was speaking in numbers of items that were submitted and then resubmitted to your agency.
Okay.
The specific item I want to speak on, and Your Honor, could I
Ask a question.
ask the bell to give Ms. Masajewski a copy of the reports?
Sure.
Ms. Masajewski, they're in order.
Miss Massachusetts.
The case file I received here that I have on a computer. If you would look at page number 1.
Okay.
It has sub numbers under submission info. And this is the case we've been talking about, 040276. Submission numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. And on page 2 is submission number 5. Could you explain number 1 and 2 submissions? Would them be the original submissions?
Them be the original submissions.
Yes, they appear to be.
And then you come down to 3 and you have what is resubmitted on 12/6 of 21. And could you read off the numbers of items resubmitted?
Yes, it states items 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
And then if you proceed on to number 4, you have a resubmitted data of 12/13/21, and you have items 10, 12, 13, 17, 28, and 29, correct? Number 4, sub number 4.
Yes, that's what it appears, that 10, 12, 13, and 17, it states resubmitted.
And the asterisk beside it means that they were resubmitted, correct?
That's what it appears to me, yes.
And then if you'll please go to the next page, number 2, you have sub number 5. And these both have the asterisk beside the numbers. These are numbers, excuse me, this is received date of resubmission of 3/30 of 2022, correct?
That's what it appears to be, yes, 3/30 of 22.
And could you relate to the people in the courts and the jurors what them item numbers are?
Items 8 and 9.
And in reference, I apologize, I'd like to bounce back to your report, I believe at number 12. Could you relay what item number 8 is?
Yes, item number 8 are the swabs from the safe.
The safe.
Mhm.
So they've been resubmitted at a later date.
Well, I need to explain this paperwork a little further. If you look at the original submission dates, which is submission number 1 on page 1, that is talking about it being received at Crime Scene Region 3. If you look over to the far right on the page, it says Crime Scene Region 3. That is not our laboratory, but it is an ISP facility. And so it appears that when it is then marking things as resubmitted, that it's actually using all of the data which is in the system, which would include the crime scene. My understanding in looking at this and seeing who those items were received by and looking at the paperwork in totality is that it was not received at our laboratory twice. It was received at our laboratory just one time.
Okay. If you would go to page 7 of 7, and that is under.
Okay, that destroyed the dopey plan ahead, but okay.
Lab case completed reports. I'd probably make it simpler on you to just ask what section TR is.
What section TR is?
Yes, what TR would represent.
That is trace chemistry.
And what is trace chemistry?
Trace chemistry is hairs, fibers, gunshot residue.
And what do they do at trace chemistry?
We don't have trace chemistry at our laboratory. We have a trace chemistry section in the Chicago laboratory, but they examine hairs to see similarities if they could have been originated from a common individual, fibers, what type of fiber it might be, or I'm not trained in this, so I don't really want to speak too much further on it, but they look at fibers and commonality of fibers, and then they look at gunshot residue.
Okay.
The irony of her not wanting to overspeak past her expertise in the face of this goof's questions is palpable.
Your Honor, that's all I have. I reserve the right to call her at a later date if possible.
Judge, if he has more questions for this witness, he's a crime lab person. He needs to ask those questions now.
Well, he'll be allowed to present his case at his time when the burden, or I'm sorry, the burden never shifts, but when the case and presentation of any evidence he wishes to present switches over to him. Right now, we're on the state's direct, and so
Okay, so the prosecutor is trying to cut her loose from the trial so she doesn't have to come back and doesn't have to be under subpoena. But yeah, you know, that's just not how it works. He can call her in his case in chief. He won't because he doesn't know what the hell he's doing, and he couldn't make anything of it if he wanted to. But that's just what that little bit is.
do you have any redirect, Mr. Jones?
Your Honor, I have no more questions for this witness. I'd ask that she be released from her subpoena.
All right, and Mr. Yohn, is this witness going to be allowed to go back to the lab and back to her regular duties, or are you going to be recalling her?
Give me one moment, Your Honor, just approximately 45 seconds. I do have a specific question for you, Ms. Massajuski. The swab on the floor, was it tested for any other substance, such as maybe a chemical?
No, I only tested that for blood.
So you were not able to tell whether there was a chemical?
I do not test for chemicals. That would be a chemistry section.
All right. In this type of case, whereas
You said one question.
the claim was to be sprayed or penetrated, whichever it was, with a can of this nature, wouldn't it be logical to test for such? spray?
I don't make the requests as to what samples get tested. And quite honestly, I don't even know if that would be possible with that type of sample, but that would have been something that we don't decide at the crime lab. We are kind of somewhat instructed as to what we are looking for and what we should be testing for.
And there's a such thing as a case correspondence history, correct?
Yes.
Where you correspond with the agency such as Mr. Jones here or the detectives in the case.
Yes, that's correct.
Do you have that case correspondence with you?
No, I don't. I don't have that as part of my case notes.
You had several conversations with Miss Kelsey Miller, correct?
If it indicates that, I believe I did, but like I said, I don't have that paperwork in front of me. So I may need to see it to recall the conversation.
Your Honor, could I briefly have the deputy take this laptop and show her?
Ask the bailiff to carry it up there for you.
It's already pulled up. Save a lot of time rather than. And that's a case correspondence on 040726, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And in that paragraph, you'll see towards the right and middle, it states that victim, I believe it's the word victim, was penetrated with a can or cleaning bottle. It may not be verbatim, but it says something to that effect, correct?
Can you give me a moment to read it?
Yes.
Thank you.
How about you shut your hole?
Okay, I've had a chance to review it. What was your question?
And does it say anything about penetration by a cleaning bottle?
Yes, it states that this is a conversation with Kelsey Miller, and it indicates that she informed me a cleaning bottle was used to penetrate the victim and was sprayed into her mouth and on her body.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll take that back, please.
You'll have to return the laptop to the defendant.
And just for the record, that's not a positive conclusion. That's not something you analyze, correct?
Yes, that's correct. That was just getting some information on the case so that I had a direction to know what to do with the evidence that was submitted and what I needed to, or possibly where I should collect evidence from.
Thank you, Ms. Massajewski. I rest.
All right, so
Yes, sir,
Mr.
Your Honor.
Yohn, can this witness be released from her witness subpoena with your further questioning?
I take that back. I apologize. I do apologize. Since you're here, and I want to go ahead and get you out of here, I want to touch base on the knife.
Okay.
You obviously tested that, correct?
Yes, I did.
And we spoke on touch DNA, such as me grabbing this napkin here, and it's logical to say that my touch DNA is there, correct?
Yes, every time you touch an item, you do leave behind some DNA. It's just a matter of whether it is enough DNA for us to be able to detect. We do have thresholds that need to be met when it comes to DNA. In previous examples, I've spoke of at least one contributor where there's evidence below our threshold that there may be someone else there, but we do have thresholds in place. So just because you touch an item doesn't mean I will always be able to detect that DNA on that item.
Okay, and do you have that report with you, or do you remember it?
Regarding the knife?
Yes.
Yes, I have it.
And that report, could you tell us the contributors on that report?
Yes. The swab that I received from the knife had a mixture of 2 people on it. There was a major contributor, which matched that of Christina Lohman. And then there was a low-level second contributor at one of the 23 locations that we test for, from which Timothy Schmidt cannot be excluded from. So he's included as a potential contributor of that limited second DNA profile.
And you, the main standards you tested were the defendant and a co-defendant, correct?
Correct.
And
I shouldn't say main. I mean, I tested a standard from, yes.
and out of them 2 people, there was no DNA on that knife from them 2.
That I could detect, correct.
And I believe you tested the fabric from the chair,
Yes, I did test fabric from a chair.
and would that be the same results?
For the fabric from the chair, I did semen testing on that. I was looking for the presence of semen, and semen was not indicated on that sample.
Thank you. Ms. Massajewski, no test is perfect, correct?
I do have to be more specific.
I'll reword this. ISP Forensics Labs has issues just as other labs do, correct?
Objection, speculation.
I'll overrule the objection.
I rest, Your Honor. This witness can be released.
I'm overruling the objection. You can have her answer if you like, Mr. Yohn.
Okay, excuse me, I apologize. Not every test can be for sure. True.
We have tests that are indicative tests. That means a sample is or like blood is indicated. It can possibly test or react with other things. So I don't know if you would say that's an imperfect test. It's just not a conclusive test. It gives an indication of a substance. With semen, we have indicative tests with semen, but then we also have a microscopic test where if I view sperm, that is a conclusive test. I have visually seen the sperm and therefore I know semen is present. So when we're speaking in scientific terms, there's indication of substances. There's also conclusive results. As with DNA, DNA is what it is. The results I get are trustworthy, and I would say that they are perfect. What I see is actually what is there. So in terms of your specific question, I'm not sure if I've answered that, but if you have anything further, go ahead.
Not yourself, but there are faults in analyst testing. I mean, there are complications at times. There are testings that one may mess up on, situations in the lab where something may spill or an additive of solution is added and it is too much by accident. And
If there are things that are done in the laboratory that affect results, we do have quality measures to deal with those, and those get indicated within the file. We do have what are called incident reports, that if there is something that were to happen in a case, it gets documented. Essentially everything we do is an open book, and all of our reports and things are reviewed by another qualified analyst when we are done. And again, if there was some sort of incident in a case, it gets reported within the case file, and that becomes part of the documentation of the case.
there is what is called independent testing labs. True.
Yes, that's correct.
And sometimes there's testing that has been done at ISP that has faults or issues that people proceed to have independent testing done, right?
Objection assumes facts not in evidence.
I rest your honor. Thank you, Ms. Massajuski. I appreciate you coming today.
All right, Mr. Yohn, may this witness be released from her witness subpoena?
Yes, sir.
All right, so you are free
Well,
to
there you go.
Thanks, Mr. Jones, unless you
You
have any
released the
reason.
subpoena. That's
Yeah,
good.
All right, so you are free to go. Thank you. If you could return to the bailiff the items that were passed up, for you to look out, you can return those. Thank you. Mr. Jones, next witness for the state,
People call it Brian Long, Your Honor.
Ryan Long. If you could come forward, sir, to the circuit clerk up here and raise your right hand. She'll swear you in.
Do solemnly swear the testimony you may give in the cause not contained before this court shall be the truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do. Have a seat over here to my right in the witness stand. Mr. Jones, when you're ready with your questions.
Thank you, Your Honor. Can you tell us your name, please?
Brian Long.
What do you do for a living, Mr. Long?
I am a forensic scientist with the Illinois State Police at the Springfield Forensic Science Laboratory.
Is there a specific area that you specialize in?
Yes, I specialize in the examination of latent prints.
When we talk about latent prints, are we talking about fingerprints, the vernacular?
Yes.
In order to receive that position, to do that job, was there specialized training
Lord.
that you had to undergo?
Yes, there was.
Could you describe that for us?
It was a 2-year formal training program that went over the history of fingerprints, how fingerprints are developed in the womb, goes over how to process for fingerprints, comparing fingerprints, and then we've got other things such as courtroom demeanor training, and that was mostly it.
After you completed that, well, during that 2-year training program, were there proficiency exams that you had to pass?
Yes, sir.
Did you pass all those?
Yes, I have.
And after you completed your training, was there also yearly or twice a year proficiency exams that you have to undergo to retain your position to stay working with the Illinois State Police?
Yes, there's a annual proficiency exam that I have to take.
And have you passed every one of those proficiency exams?
Yes, I have.
Your Honor, we'd ask that this witness be certified in the area of latent prints, specifically fingerprints.
Any objection, Mr. Yohn?
No, sir.
All right, the court will find this witness to be certified as an expert in latent prints.
Mr. Long, can you tell me what the fingerprint is?
A fingerprint is an impression that's left behind on something that comes from usually the distal end of someone's fingers.
So I guess when you say latent print is what's left by the fingerprints that are on your hands. Is that fair to say?
Yes, if if you touch something, it's possible that you're leaving behind some kind of residue, which I would call a latent print. Yes,
And everyone's fingerprints are different.
that's correct.
If you are given a latent print from a scene and a print from a suspect, are you able to look at those prints and determine if they're made by the same person?
Sometimes, but not all of the time. Yes.
When you're making that process, or when you're doing that process, tell me how you make that determination if it's made by the same person.
I do a side-by-side comparison of the latent print to someone's known prints, and I'm looking for the agreement in size, shape, spatial relationship of individual characteristics in both prints in order to make an identification.
In this case, were you first given an item and asked to determine if there were any latent prints on a particular item?
Yes.
And was that a 409 code?
Yes, that was one item.
And I'm handing to have a bailiff hand you with one of these people's Exhibit 3. Was that the can that you were asked to determine if there were any latent prints on that can?
Yes, it is.
Can you tell me that process, how you look for latent prints on a physical item?
This particular item, it was a spray can. I took it out of the packaging and first did a visual examination to see if there were any prints that I could see prior to me doing any processing on it. After that, I attempted some processing techniques to try to develop latent prints on the item, such as superglue fuming, where the fumes from superglue will adhere to any residue that's left behind on the item, making the prints more visible. After that, I applied powder using a brush, dusting for prints. And after that process, I applied 2 different dye stains and examined the spray can using both laser light and ultraviolet light, looking for the presence of latent prints.
When you did that process, were you able to find latent prints or alien?
Yes, I was able to find one suitable latent print on People's Exhibit 3.
Once you find that latent print, what's your next step in determining that comparison?
I then, once I've found the latent print, I then compare it to any known prints that are given to me.
And in this case, was there a known print from the defendant, Bradley?
Yes, there was.
Did you compare the latent print?
Your Honor, I object. I never received these reports. I do not have them in my possession. In approximately a little bit over a year and a half, I've still never received them.
Well, at this point, we'll ask the jury to step out. If they would accompany the bailiff to the jury is done. Your objection began, you had not received these reports, so.
No, Your Honor, I do not have these reports. I believe I'm entitled to them. I do not have them in digital either.
All right, Mr. Jones, care to respond?
Judge, it's discovery number 13. It was provided to him. It's a date stamp 0484 defense copy. Show that, and bank stamp that show that it was discovered to him. I would also point out to the court that the defendant asked for, at one point, an expert in money to hire his own expert in fingerprints. So for him to suggest he doesn't have the report would seem to belittle his previous request that he wanted his own fingerprint expert to specifically confront information from Ryan Paul.
I apologize, Your Honor. I have a report as far as a laboratory report finding. I do not have any digital information. I do not have pictures of the print. I do not have any analyzations. All I have
So you do have them reports. You said you didn't have the report.
That was just the report, Your Honor.
Have the report.
The report is not a full disclosure of discovery concerning this item. The report is simply the findings. I'm sure I should be entitled to the rest as well. I've gotten everything else, I believe, except for report 12 in digital. That was the copies I had Mr. Nelson make earlier. They were digital copies. A simple report just tells that there was a finding, Your Honor. It don't give you any detail.
Does that report disclose what the finding was, Mr. Yohn?
Yes.
All right.
It don't give any detail, Judge. I think that's a Brady violation.
So your objection is overruled. The items in the state's possession have been provided to you, being the report and conclusion therein. Are you ready to have the jury to return to further? Mr. Yohn, are we ready to have the jury brought back in?
I guess not. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry?
Yes, sir.
All right. For the record, the jurors have all returned to the jury box. The defendant's objection has been overruled. And so, Mr. Jones, if you would repeat the question, or
You may start back. I'm not really sure where we were. I think where we left off was that you had found a latent print on that 409, that carpet cleaner can. And I had asked you if you had a comparison print from Bradley on to compare the latent.
That's correct.
And you did have a comparison print from the defendant to compare the latent. Is that right?
Yes, I did.
When you compared the latent print that was found on that 409 can to the known standard, the print from the defendant, Bradley on, what did you find?
I found that the latent print on the spray can in People's Exhibit 3 was made by the person whose fingerprints appear on the card marked Bradley S. Yohn.
In your role with the Illinois State Police, we've talked about how in the first piece of evidence, you looked for the latent prints yourself. Are there also occasions where latent prints are recovered by an agency and they are sent to you for comparison?
Yes.
In this case, did that happen as well?
Yes, it did.
Specifically, were there latent prints sent to you in digital format as well as friction ridge loops from the Illinois State Police from a Toyota Avalon found in Springfield?
Yes.
I'm going to ask the bailiff to approach you and mark this People's Exhibit 13. Were those the photographs, friction ridge lift, latent prints that you were provided from the Illinois State Police?
Yes.
We did from the fingerprints, please.
Well, there are a lot of charges they have to go through.
In the
They're going to ring him up, but it'll take a minute to go through the jury
on
instructions
The exterior driver's door handle as shown
and the verdict forms.
54, if you go to the next slide, and People's Exhibit 55.
Yes, there were.
Did you compare the latent print that was found on the exterior door handle of that Toyota Avalon to the known standard from the defendant, Bradley?
I've never
Yes,
seen
I
it.
did.
What did you find about the latent print on that Toyota Avalon to the print from the defendant, Bradley?
I found that the latent print from the exterior door handle was made by the person whose prints appear on the card marked Bradley S. Yohn.
Was there also a palm print found on was there also a print found on the driver's side on the back passenger door?
Yes, there was.
Did you compare that print to the print on the card marked Bradley Yohn, the defendant?
Yes.
What did you find about the print on the
driver's side back passenger door of that Toyota Avalon?
I found that latent print on the back passenger door was made by the person whose prints appear on the card marked Bradley S. Yohn.
On the left side of the door on the passenger side of the car in People's Exhibit 56, was there a palm print that was found?
Yes, there was.
And did you compare that palm print to a palm print on a card marked palm print of Bradley Yohn?
Yes, I did.
What did you find when you compared the palm print on the Toyota Avalon to the palm print on the card of the defendant?
I found that the palm print on the passenger side left of the door, that palm print was made by the person whose palm prints appear on a card marked Bradley S. Yohn.
Were you also asked to examine a knife to see if there were any prints, latent prints that could be found on that knife?
Yes.
Now, when you looked at that knife, were you optimistic about getting prints from the handle of that knife? That's a bad question.
Very.
Let me rephrase the question. When prints, is it easier to get prints off of a smooth surface or a rough surface?
It is easier to find prints on a smooth surface.
And if the surface is rough, does it make it more difficult or more unlikely that prints will be left?
Yes.
Did you look at a particular knife in this case?
Yes, I did.
And did you look at the handle of that knife?
Yes, I did.
What did you find with regard to the handle of that knife?
That particular knife had like some kind of cord wrapped around the handle.
And in your experience with Illinois State Police, and specifically in the area of fingerprints, was that a good surface or a likely surface to contain prints?
The handle was not a good surface for me to find latent prints.
In fact, did you find any latent prints?
Objection, Your Honor.
Grounds?
This is irrelevant. There's been no test done there's been nothing concerning prints on a cloth corded handle, and we've already cleared up there was no DNA from either defendant on this cloth corded handle. What
Yes,
is Mr.
dummy.
Jones getting at?
This explains
No, I
why.
haven't heard any evidence about DNA on a cloth-covered handle, so the jury will be instructed to disregard your statement in that regard, but I will overrule your objection. You may answer the question.
Were there any prints that you found on that?
No, there were no latent prints suitable for comparison on the knife.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Any cross-examination, Mr. Young?
In reference to that 409 can, you stated you observed a fingerprint, correct?
That's correct.
I can't hold that with one finger, could I? I can't, it's not possible to hold that can with one finger, is it?
Depends.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance?
Relevance is there's alleged to be found a fingerprint on a can.
I'll overrule the objection. You may answer if you know.
Could be possible if you could balance it. Good.
Pure genius. Pure genius. Okay. Just because they only lift one fingerprint does not imply that they lifted the can one fingered, but okay.
Balancing it.
And did you, in order to hold that can like I am right now, you would expect more than one fingerprint, correct?
I don't expect any fingerprints. I'm looking for some. I don't always find prints.
And on that can, you analyzed the whole can, obviously, the diameter of the can, where one would hold a can at, any spot on that can. I do see it possible that one could hold a can and drop it and there'd be prints left. I don't concede that.
Is there a question, Mr. Young?
Yeah, yes, there is. Your Honor, I'm attempting to form it. I apologize. I find this pretty ridiculous, so I'm attempting to form.
Objection, Your Honor.
Again, Mr. Young, you're to ask the witness questions, not. Yes.
On that can, did you find any smears where there might have been fingerprints, where there might have been fingers holding it?
I didn't make note of that. I only make note of when I find a suitable print to compare.
And when I mean smears, I want to clarify, if I was to drop a can, the right thumbprint would have smeared potentially. You didn't find any of that and you didn't look for it, correct?
I didn't make a note of anything like that.
Thank you, Mr. Long. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Can you redirect?
No, Your Honor. We'd ask that the witness be released from his subpoena.
Mr. Young?
Yeah, that's fine.
Needs to stay.
No, Your Honor.
So you may step down. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We're changing we're flipping the album here. Just a second.
The 21 CF 715 People versus Bradley Yohn, all parties in council previously mentioned, record or if he's still present. Did you get the reports printed out you needed in exhibits?
Your Honor, I did not. I only was able to get a few of them printed out, and I still need to set up a monitor to display these exhibits too. I talked about this days ago. I'm going to need a little bit of time to be prepared. I'd hope to go ahead and get this over with, but I mean, I have to be able to do certain things in order to. Mr. Nelson was only able to obtain about approximately 14, 15 copies.
How much more time do you perceive that you're going to need, Mr. Young?
Half an hour to 40 minutes. I apologize, Your Honor. There's not much I can do about it.
And there's plenty that should have been done before this time, Mr. Yohn. The time for trial prep is before trial, but I will recess for 30 minutes. You get done and ready to present your case because we're going to do that in 30 minutes, sir. We'll be in recess till 1:30.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise.
All right, for the record, 21 CF 715, Mr. Jones and Mrs. Keck appearing for the people, Mr. Yohn appearing pro se with standby counsel, Mr. Nelson. We are now at 1:37 or so in the afternoon, and Mr. Yohn, are you now prepared to begin with your defense?
Your Honor, I'm about as prepared as going to be.
Okay, and are you going to be calling a witness?
Officer Ruth Bowden.
Okay. All right, so let's have the jurors brought back in, please. Thank you. You're back on the record, and the jurors are now all present in the jury box. And Mr. Yohn, do you care to present any evidence?
Officer Ruth Bowden, Your Honor.
All right, if we could have Officer Ruth Bowden brought to the courtroom. You could come forward, ma'am, to the deputy circuit clerk and raise your right hand. She'll swear you in.
You do solemnly swear that the testimony you may give in the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do.
Seat over here to my right, the witness stand.
I guess he's going to say they didn't prove it, which is the usual defense, but he's not doing well with it.
There you go. All right, Mr. Yohn, when you're ready with your questions.
You're Officer Ruth Bowden, correct?
Yes,
Would you state your name and credentials for the record, please?
it's Ruth Bowden. I'm a deputy with Adams County Sheriff's Department.
And how long have you been with Adams County Sheriff's Department?
Approximately 19 and a half years.
And you were employed as a street deputy at this current moment.
Correct.
And on November 9th of 2021, you were doing the same occupation, or were you in a different
Same, patrol deputy.
You're obviously familiar with the matters we're here on today, November 9th of 2021. And you were to be the first deputy on scene to.
Okay, so did I miss this? The state rested, and now this is his case in chief, because he called this witness and seems to be directing
An alleged home invasion and sexual assault, right?
There were two of us deputies that arrived approximately the same time, Sergeant Joe Lohmeyer and I.
Do you remember who arrived first?
No, it would have been within a minute or two of the same.
Could you also relate to us the other officers that come in behind you?
I couldn't. There was a lot. I don't know exactly who all was there. It'd be on our dispatch ticket.
Yes, understood. Summers sound familiar. Deputy Miller.
I believe they were there at some point. I don't know exactly when.
You're not for sure. Sergeant McMahon, maybe.
I believe he was there.
Upon arriving to the scene, what did you proceed to do once you arrived there?
Sergeant Lohmeyer and I talked to the initial caller, Timothy Schmidt.
And where did you talk to him at?
I believe we initially talked to him, I think it was outside towards the garage area or the driveway maybe.
Upon speaking to him, what did he relate to you?
Just pretty much what he had relayed to the dispatch center, that there was some sort of incident that happened involving his wife, where she was hijacked in her vehicle, sexually assaulted, and some things were stolen from their house, and a vehicle was also stolen.
And could you relate to those of us here today your further proceedings after that, what you did upon talking to Mr. Schmidt?
I don't understand the.
After you talked to husband, Mr. Schmidt, what did you proceed to do after that time?
I mean,
did you enter the home?
Yes, we eventually did enter the home.
And eventually, could you, to the best of your recollection, do you remember approximately how long after you arrived, how long after you talked to Mr. Schmidt that you entered the home?
I don't, to be honest.
Not even an estimate?
I'm not real sure.
It could have been a half an hour?
I don't believe it'd be that long.
And when you entered the home, what did you observe when you entered the home?
I know when we walked through the garage, the open garage, and then there was a walk-through door to enter the house. There was damage to the door, and there was shoe print on the door. Obviously, it appeared if it was a kicked in. As we entered the home, we entered into, I believe it was the kitchen area, and there was a elderly female sitting on the ground inside. There's like an open concept floor plan inside kind of the kitchen into the living room area.
And in reference to the elderly female sitting inside, where was she sitting?
I believe, so it was an open concept. So I believe it was kind of where the kitchen and the dining room meet. I think they had different floor surfaces, if I remember correctly. So into the kind of living room area.
Do you remember any object or piece of furniture she was sitting by?
I believe she was pretty near a chair, and then there were some sofas in there too, if I recall.
Okay. And in your report, I have your report here. In your report, you wrote that CO was on the floor and had to have help getting up from that floor.
At one point she did, yes.
And specifically, you stated that she, and I quote, appeared upset and later needed help getting up. Would that be a correct assumption that she later needed help getting up?
I don't think she needed help right away. I think, eventually at some point.
But deputies did help her up.
Yeah, I don't recall who did, but somebody did, yes.
Do you recall where they helped her up to?
I don't.
And I want to ask about the clothing she was wearing when you entered the home. To the best of your recollection, do you remember what clothing she was wearing?
I don't.
Was she naked potentially, or?
No, she would have had clothing on. I just don't remember the exact garments she had on.
And you did not help her up to the couch?
No.
That couch, obviously you entered the scene and what steps did you take after entering the scene and upon seeing her on the floor?
I don't understand what.
When you entered the scene,
Okay.
what steps did you further take?
In terms of.
Securing the scene, speaking to anyone?
Okay. I know we entered, and I know Sergeant Lohmeyer had spoken to Christina. She was visibly upset, crying, and she had just kind of given us a kind of fragmented statements on what had happened initially.
And do you recall deputies having to assist CL off the floor due to any certain reason?
I don't know. I don't know why.
You stated you arrived within minutes of Deputy Lohmeyer. On the call for service sheet, I believe it states 6:27. I'd like to ask you, in your profession, what is an administrator?
In terms, usually it's one of the more head
Officer, in terms
administrator
of
and officer.
yeah, so like in your ranks, in your level, is there such a thing called an administrator?
Well, administrator usually is a higher level. Like in ours would be like the sheriff, chief deputies, sergeants.
And were there any administrators local?
If we're referring to the same thing, like a Sergeant Lohmeyer would have been the patrol, administrator, if you will.
And there were no other administrators there throughout this time. You obviously stayed around the scene till I believe it was approximately 9 p.m., a little bit after.
Okay.
Were there any other administrators there during this time?
If you're speaking of higher ranking people, yes, I believe I did see the sheriff there at one point, Sheriff Wagner. And I know Sergeant McMahon, I was there, Sergeant Lohmeyer. And I don't remember if anybody else of the higher ranking were there that I recall.
Outside of the police and law enforcement, were there any other people present?
At points, yes.
And do you remember what point this was?
I know when we initially got there, from what I recall, it was Sergeant Lohmeyer and I, and then Timothy Schmidt, who resides there, and also his wife. And I know at some point, I believe it was a few of her daughters arrived. I don't know the times, but they were there at some point.
Pretty close to.
I don't think it was really very long, but.
You say you observed an elderly woman on the floor and she was frantic or giving frantic responses. Obviously, the floor is not a comfortable position. Is there a reason that y'all didn't immediately help her up or get her to a safer and more comfortable position?
I don't know. Don't recall.
And you relayed in your report here that she was helped up to a couch. Can you shed some light on that?
If I had it in there, that must have been what happened, but I don't really recall what she was up to.
And just based on your recollection and the floor plan, knowing the floor plan, about how far do you think that couch was from that position she was seated on the floor?
If I had to guess in feet, maybe 6 to 8 feet, roughly, give or take.
And you spoke to Timothy Schmidt and you probably heard some things CL was stating. I want to talk about further procedure you took in this incident. This is a very big incident in the area, and it's commonly known. So I would expect an officer of law to maybe remember a bit of procedure they took. And I'd ask you further to provide any recollection of procedure you took upon and after speaking to CL and Timothy Schmidt.
I know Sergeant Lohmeyer was there, who was my supervisor, so I know he spoke to her more in depth than I did. And I know I did walk, I kind of, did check around the area. Walked around with Timothy at one point.
In the area, you mean the home?
The
or
residence.
outside?
The residence.
The residence, okay. And did Officer Lohmeyer leave quickly, or did he hang around the scene himself?
He was there quite a while.
Quite a while. So you proceeded to look around the home and probably a form of securing it and looking to see what had been ransacked or went through.
I know Timothy had kind of showed me around to, show me things that were kind of askew or out of the ordinary of the way they would have left it.
In reference to askew, the word you used, the words askew and out of the ordinary, not the way that he would have left them. You obviously entered the scene not too long after the 911 phone call. The 911 phone call was alleged to be at 6:09 and you arrived at 6:27. When you walked around the scene, did you see anything out of the ordinary?
I know when we initially got there, there was a garage, initially by the driveway, there's like a patch of grass and there was car tracks through it, which was kind of odd. And there was items on the garage floor, kind of almost in a pile. And then of course, as we walk through garage door into the house area, there's a shoe print on the door, which, is kind of odd. And there was damage to the door and door jamb. And as we walk in, of course, there's some things in the kitchen. I think a drawer had been gone through. There was a knife on the floor in the kitchen. And there was also a spray bottle of cleaner that was on the ground. And the house appeared to be a very, clean house. So that seemed odd to me, in my initial contact.
When you say it appeared to be very clean, it wasn't cluttered or messy?
Not in my opinion. It seemed to be a clean house other than the things that looked out of the ordinary to me, just in first contact.
And you come to the conclusion in your report that one of the kitchen cabinets had been gone through, correct?
I believe I had that in there, yes.
And you know how many appeared to be gone through?
I don't.
Was it several, just a singular?
I don't. I don't know if I had it in there, but.
I don't believe you did. I just wanted to inquire.
Okay, I'm not sure, yeah.
And you also stated there was a knife on the floor and a can of cleaner.
Correct.
The word ransack, I'd like to ask you, do you know the word ransack?
I do.
Could you relay that, based on your opinion, what ransack means?
Something when it's ransacked, if it's an orderly house, it would be things thrown, possibly, out of drawers maybe, or maybe food on the ground, maybe paperwork, mail thrown on the ground, things of that nature.
And ransack is similar to what you stated. Ultimately, it is search thoroughly and to plunder.
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
It also stated to be ransacked, Your Honor.
All right, you need to ask the witness questions rather than making statements, though, Mr. Yohn, so I'm going to sustain the objection and can move on with questioning your witness.
And husband Schmidt, he pointed out all of these things to you. Do you remember what he pointed out specifically?
I can't remember if he pointed out the kitchen itself. That was visible right when you walked in. I know we did walk through the house at a little bit later time, and he showed me a bedroom, which I remember he said, I believe some drawers were gone through something, and there was if I recall, a liquor bottle that was pushed over and a wallet out of a drawer, and I think there was some jewelry taken, he had informed me. And then we did walk down to the basement. They have a large open basement, and he advised in the middle section of the basement there were lots of drawers that were gone through and pulled out, which wasn't normal. And then also along a different wall, there's a wall safe, and he advised somebody must have moved. I think there was a piece of wood in front of it, and it was moved, and he believes somebody tried to get into it.
And that basement, did that basement appear as a normal living area? One that someone occupied regularly?
That I don't really recall that part.
It wasn't cluttered or potentially used as a storage spot?
I honestly don't remember.
You're obviously familiar with guns, correct, as an officer?
She pled.
Did you see any gun paraphernalia?
I don't remember that.
Mr. Schmidt, he, as you relayed in your report, he pointed out that lights had been turned on, cabinets opened in the kitchen, and the safe. Does that seem to be accurate?
I don't believe the safe was opened, from what I recall.
I apologize. He just pointed out the safe, and that's what you referenced in your.
He did, yeah, he did show me where the safe was in the basement, but it didn't seem like it was access to him.
And did Mr. Schmidt relate to you anything that he knew was missing?
I believe he said something about some jewelry in one of the bedrooms he took me into. And I know, I want to say that's all he knew for sure was missing at that time. I know, at that time we wouldn't have been able to go through the whole house or inventory anything specifically, but.
And by the time of your concluding of walking through the scene, the time you were done walking through the scene, could you give a brief estimate on how long you think you've been there?
I have no idea.
And while you're doing this assessment of the home, do you recall where Officer Lohmeyer was?
He, I believe, stayed up with Christina upstairs.
And during the concluding of your observation of the house being taken around the house, when you come back up, you obviously come back upstairs, correct?
Yes.
And it was you, Lohmeyer, Timothy, and CO, correct?
Yes, and there might have been more people there by that point. I don't remember when other people came.
And to try to help shed some light, once you arrived on the scene, did you do this assessment promptly? Was it a while after?
I know, obviously, we had talked to him outside for a few minutes and then went inside, and I know Christine had given a few just fragmented statements, and I know Sergeant Lohmeyer stayed up with her, and then Timothy had kind of showed me around. It wasn't really long after we got there that I walked with him throughout.
CL eventually went to the hospital, correct?
Yes.
And was that while you were there?
Yeah, I think she did go when I was still there.
And do you recall who took her?
I'm not 100%. I thought she went with her husband, but I'm not 100% on that.
Yeah, that is what's in your report. I just wanted to make sure. Do you recall approximately what time she left for the hospital?
I don't.
It was maybe a while after you were there?
It had been a while, yes.
And, did you say 45 minutes, hour?
I really don't know because
Just an estimate.
I don't know.
And, when she left for the hospital, there was obviously others there, correct?
Correct.
Do you recall who may have been there then?
There was a lot of people there. I couldn't tell you every person, no. If, with our dispatch tickets though, any officers would have been, that would be on the dispatch ticket.
I find it hard that you don't remember
Objection, Your Honor.
who was
Argument.
there. There was
Yep.
And do you recall anybody in the home as far as the rest of the people who were there?
At different times, yes.
Different times, such as maybe after you did your assessment of the scene?
Yes.
And in particular, was there a daughter there that went through the home looking for things for the declarant or victim CL?
I know there were, I believe at least two of the daughters showed up.
And what were they doing while you were there?
I mean, they were in the house. I didn't, keep track of them completely.
And it's a pretty big house, correct?
Correct.
And they
Just
were
a
not
wake
in
up
your
call.
sight at all times.
No, they wouldn't have been.
And you remained on the scene until CSI Field arrived, true?
I was there, yes.
And could you tell me how you proceeded after that
With,
in reference to this whole night? What did you proceed to do after that time?
I know Sergeant Lohmeyer contacted her when she got there. She proceeded to take evidence and do what she needed to do with her protocols.
And you just hung around and secured the scene, or?
I stayed there, yes.
Approximately how long did you stay there? I mean,
I have no idea.
you don't.
It'd be on the dispatch ticket, any information of my whereabouts.
You would give me one moment. And you are S11, correct?
Correct.
Do you recall if it was later in the night that you left? Was it early in the AM of the next day?
It was, I know I was there for quite a while, and then I was instructed at one point to go to Blessing Hospital for, I believe, the crime scene tech for the state. I believe it was Brandy Field in reference to some shoe impressions.
Yes. That was quite a bit later.
It was a while, yeah, after she got there. She went and kind of did what she needed to do, and then I was told to go to the hospital to meet with a couple subjects and take some photos to forward to her.
When you say she did what she had to do.
Correct.
That's obviously taking pictures and analyzing a scene for forensics. Was she done by the time you went to obtain these pictures?
No, she wouldn't have been.
And that knife that was on the floor, do you recall what it looked like?
I don't. It was a knife, but I don't remember details of it.
Just a simple knife, kitchen knife?
I believe it was a kitchen knife.
Potentially maybe even a meat carving knife.
I don't know much about knives, to be honest, kitchen knives.
But it did appear to be a regular kitchen knife.
Correct.
And the spray can on the floor, do you remember what location that was in? Whereabouts it might have been?
Somewhere in the kitchen. Like I said, it was an open concept. From what I recall, it was in the kitchen close to where the living room area would be.
So in the potential center median of a walkway, maybe.
I don't remember that part.
Give me one moment. You obviously we're directed to go to Blessing Hospital and take shoe prints. If you give me one moment, apologize. How many persons' shoe prints did you take?
It was several. It might have been 2, 3, 4. It was more than one. I do know that. And I just took photos of them. I didn't.
And what did you proceed to do with the photos?
I forwarded them to my supervisor, or a supervisor. I believe I sent them to Sergeant Jake McMahon.
And if you recall, were there any Nikes in them shoes?
I don't recall.
As I stated earlier, there was a 911 call made. You're obviously aware of that, or else you would not have responded to the scene, correct?
Correct.
And are you aware that CL denied services?
Objection, Your Honor. Seems facts not in evidence and call for hearsay.
Yeah. It's creepy the way he does that. But yes, he doesn't want
Are
to
you aware
provide.
that CL denied services in such call?
I'm not sure what your question.
Are you aware that CL denied ambulatory services when someone made the phone call?
Oh, I'm not aware.
And I want to go back a little bit in reference to CL. She was sitting on the floor. How did she appear other than frantic? Physically, how did she appear?
She was sitting kind of odd with her legs to the side. I do remember that. And I mean, appeared she'd been crying. I just didn't seem real happy. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd never met her before, but she seemed distraught, in my opinion.
And you stated in your
I have to say, all the police officers on scene, their testimony is incredibly congruent, and I believe there was a motion to exclude witnesses here.
in your report, I apologize, I'm going to go back one more time. And in reference to the cabinet, you stated that there was a kitchen cabinet that had been gone through. Could you describe that?
I don't recall.
It was an open door or a drawer maybe?
Whatever's in my report, I don't recall the exact details.
While you were there, while CL was still on the floor, or after being picked up, helped up to the couch, did you observe any blood?
Are you asking on her or in the area or?
On her or in the area anywhere?
I do remember what appeared to be a reddish smears. There was a green fabric chair, which would have been in between the kitchen area into the living room. So it would have been slightly into the living room area. And there were some reddish smears kind of below it, kind of in front of it below.
I apologize for trying to go in depth. Your report is very minimal. It's
Objection, Your Honor.
Yes.
Grounds.
Argumentative, calling the report minimal.
All right. So if we could ask the witness questions, Mr. Yohn.
yes, sir. Did it appear she was bleeding a lot?
I don't know if she was bleeding. I just said I saw red smears. I'm not sure if it was blood or not.
It probably wasn't enough to certify that it was blood, correct?
I don't know.
And you talk about the chair, the green plaid chair. Was there any blood on that chair?
I don't know if there was blood, but there was like a discoloration on it.
Your Honor, if I could, I'd like to present a couple exhibits of said chair. If possible.
Are you needing the bailiff to take those to
Yes,
the
please.
witness? Okay.
This would be a close-up of the chair and.
Judge, can we get an exhibit number?
Do you have these labeled as defendant's exhibits, Mr. Yohn? On the
Exhibit number 74. And they're under image. Image 2341 and 2340.
I think that's a perfect summation of the situation, David.
The documents handed to the witness, defendant's exhibit.
No, Your Honor, I did not have time. However, I do have them marked here in digital. And I have provided the
Judge, I've been busy with prison and such.
images with state's attorneys also.
We can have the bailiff return the exhibits to Mr. Yohn so he can mark them as trial exhibits, defendant exhibit. And then if you would try your best to number them sequentially so we can keep track of what's been admitted and what's not and what exhibits you're referring to at the trial.
I don't even blame him here. This isn't rocket science, but a layperson just is not going to understand what's going on. You mark exhibits for different things, and then what he wants to do is introduce his own exhibits. You have to number them for yourself. But whatever, we're muddling through.
The jurors will review and deliberate, as well as any appellate court who would have to reference those exhibits in the future. Mr. Bailiff, you might assist us by providing him with defendant exhibit stickers.
Yes, the future appellate court wants those clearly marked.
If you'd like to use the stickers, just place those on the document that you're going to be handing to the witness.
So they can be summarily ignored with specificity.
Every number you want to reference those by.
Your Honor, there would be exhibit number 1 and number 2, images 2345.
Man, I don't know. That might be the convention. When I offer exhibits, I do whatever I feel like.
2339.
If I'm in a alphabetical mood, I'll just call that Exhibit A. If I'm in a numeric mood, I'll just call it Exhibit 1.
The witness. Mr. Yohn, if you would continue with your questions.
Key is to identify specifically.
That chair?
Yes,
And is that the green plaid chair you were speaking of?
it appears to be. These are black and white, but I believe it's the same pattern.
And Your Honor, may I admit these into evidence?
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
All right, so defendants number 1 and number 2 are admitted with no objection.
Your Honor, here is 2339. And that would be one of the exhibits you hold in your hand, correct?
Correct.
And that would be the other one, 2345.
Correct.
And does there appear to be any blood there?
I don't know if it would be blood, but it appears to be a discoloration.
And, you stated that officers helped her to the couch upon getting off the floor, correct?
Somebody did, yes.
And you stated that she was bleeding also, or it appeared that she was bleeding, correct?
I don't know if she was bleeding or not.
Your Honor, if I may, I'd like to present exhibits 3 and 4.
Rayla would take exhibits 3 and 4 in defense to the witness. Thank you.
And are then is that the couch that you remember?
Yeah, I believe that was on a far wall, like an opposite wall from the chair.
Approximately 6 to 8 feet, as you stated, away from the chair.
I'm going to guess that, yes.
And doesn't appear to be any blood on that couch, does there?
I can't tell. There's a dark colored, looks like a blanket there, so I don't know what's under the blanket, but
Your Honor, first I have a couple questions. In reference to her seated on that couch, you said you'd obviously been there for a while, correct? You've been on the scene for a while. You stayed there for quite some time.
I was there for some time.
So you were in and out, and after she was helped up off the floor to the couch, you probably observed her on the couch at times.
It's some point.
And did she appear to be relaxed and seated back, or was she
I don't recall that.
tense, straight?
I don't recall.
You don't recall? Do you recall what end of the couch she may have been sitting at from memory or even from your pictures?
I really don't recall.
Your Honor, may I place the exhibits into evidence?
Any objection
No, Your Honor.
to defendant's exhibits number 3 and 4 are admitted without objection?
And that would be the couch there, correct?
Yes, that is the same one as the photos.
Excuse
It's the same one as the photos.
me. And that one would also be.
Yes, it is.
And there's no coloration that you can determine there, correct? I apologize, the screen's a bit different than normal, but you obviously
I don't see anything right there, no.
To clarify that, you were there long enough that she left for the hospital and you were still around the scene, obviously walking through or doing what y'all had to secure the scene. After she raised up off that couch, did you see any discoloration or blood or anything?
I don't recall.
But if it was red, you would have probably noticed it, correct?
I might have.
Thank you.
I think he's going with if she wasn't bleeding profusely at all times, it must not have happened.
I'd like to speak on the
think
home
that's the
overall.
idea. I'm not sure.
You observed the home, so you could tell that there was obviously an abundance of items there, correct?
It was a large house.
And some, maybe even a lot being breakables, true?
I don't recall.
Were there a lot of glass figurines, ceramic potentially.
I don't recall.
Based on your observing of such scene, it did not appear to be dirty as you stated earlier. True? It did not appear to be dirty?
There were sections that were, not to the normal, but the overall house seemed to be pretty clean.
The overall house seemed to be pretty clean. What sections you would probably say the kitchen and the bedroom appeared not to be normal?
I would say the kitchen with the knife and the carpet cleaner lying on the ground did not appear normal. And in the basement with some of the drawers open did not appear to be normal.
If you would give me just one moment, please. I don't have, the home appeared to be as if it was lived in. True.
Correct.
And you did state there were several on scene, including family. Taking into account you being first on scene, being there until approximately 9:30 p.m. or even later, you were of knowledge of people being in scene in their interaction. True? You're of knowledge of their interaction with the scene?
Of whose?
Deputies, the daughters.
I mean, I don't know what everybody was doing at all times, if that's what you're asking.
What was anybody doing?
I can count for myself. I know there was other people on scene.
And I'm gonna read off a list of persons, and you acknowledge if these were in fact there. Heidi Young would be a daughter.
I believe
You may not
so.
know her by name, but she was there.
I believe she was.
And Ilsa Terrell,
I believe she
another
was.
daughter. Lomeyer,
Yes. Sergeant Lomeyer was.
Sergeant Lomeyer. Sheriff Wagner, who was sheriff at that time.
Correct.
Chief Deputy Goodwin, or was it Smith?
I'm not sure about them.
Yourself,
Correct.
Deputy Sergeant McMahon,
Yes.
husband Schmidt,
Who?
husband Tim Schmidt,
Timothy Schmidt, yes.
Deputy Shoney,
Yes.
Kelsey Miller.
Investigator Miller. Yeah, she was there at one point.
Yes, I apologize. And is it a possibility that Deputy Shackleton was there?
I don't believe so.
Deputy Bowden, you secured the scene, true? You secured the scene.
I didn't, just myself. I know Sergeant Lomeyer was there and then other people came later.
I want to ask you once more, you're aware of the claims CL made, such as home invasion, hijacking, kidnapping, among others, correct?
Correct.
And sexually assaulted number of times, throwing down stairs. Would I be correct in assuming throwing down stairs?
I didn't talk to her myself very much. I know Sergeant Lomeyer did, and that's why in my report I know I had to refer to his.
Though you don't know, I would like to ask, did she appear, CL was a 77-year-old woman. Did she appear to be throwing down stairs?
I don't know.
Deputy, these are some very serious claims. They're extremely serious. You yourself, did you urge CL to go to the hospital?
Did I urge her? No, when we get on scene, we're concerned obviously about her safety with the allegations. And also we're trying to get information about a suspect. Because obviously if there's suspects out, we're concerned about the safety of the public in general.
I have just a few more questions, Deputy Bowden. In Adams County, what is the standard procedure in securing a crime scene such as this?
I know we get there and I generally do whatever my supervisor tells me to.
Do you all tape the scene off? Do you all block the scene out from other intruders or persons entering?
I know I do whatever my sergeant asks me to, whatever their protocol is.
And that night, what did your sergeant ask you to do?
We were just there by ourselves initially, so we went inside and obviously spoke to her briefly and talked to Timothy Schmidt, the caller.
And your sergeant was?
Sergeant Joe Lohmeyer.
Deputy, it interests me that approximately 10 people were in this scene, this very serious and heinous scene.
Objection, Your Honor. Is there a question?
I'm asking the question. Is that proper?
I'm not sure. Like I said, I follow what my sergeant tells me to do.
And ISP, Brandyfield ISP, she arrived around 9 p.m.
I'm not sure.
You're not sure? Where was the proper procedure at in this matter?
Objection, Your Honor, argumentative.
Sustain the objection. She's already testified she's not aware of what that would be, Mr. Yohn.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
All right. Any cross?
No, Your Honor.
Yeah, seriously.
Step down. Thank you.
I'd ask that she be released from her subpoena at this point, Your Honor.
Mr. Yohn, any reason why this witness could not be released from her witness subpoena?
No, sir.
All right. Released from your subpoena and are free to go. State have the next, I'm sorry, defense have the next witness ready.
Your Honor, I'd ask that this one may take quite a while.
We've still got quite a while left in the day, Mr. Yohn. Do you have one ready?
Could I use the restroom, please? It's approximately 2:30.
We'll go, yeah, and we didn't get started until not too long ago. In fact, it was precisely at 1:37. So we'll take a 10-minute recess. The bailiff would accompany the jury to the jury assembly room. All right, Mr. Yohn has passed up a subpoena that is People of the State of Illinois versus Bradley S. Yohn, 21 CF 715. Reads, People of the State of Illinois to the Sheriff of Adams County, greetings to Sheriff Rich Wagner, Adams County, Illinois. We command you, each of you personally, to be and appear before the said court in courtroom number blank at the courthouse in Quincy forthwith on the blank day of blank AD 2000 blank at the hour of blank .m to testify and the truth to speak in relation to a certain matter in controversy now pending and undetermined in said circuit court between the people of the state of Illinois, plaintiff and Bradley Scott Yohn, defendant blank at the instance of said blank, laying aside all pretense and excuses whatsoever under penalty of what the law directs, issued by Lori R. Gershwandner, clerk of the Circuit Court of Adams County, this 10th day of July, 2023. It indicates that there was service on Rich Wagner on July 11th of 2023 by Tony, looks like Groughton, Sheriff, and by Caleb, I can't read the last name, but number 39 deputy. So, Mr. Yohn, how was Sheriff or retired Sheriff Rich Wagner to know what day and time he was to appear to testify pursuant to this subpoena, given there's no date and time on it?
Obviously, he wasn't, Your Honor. We'll move on to the next.
All right.
Although I really need,
Who would your next witness be?
could I have the officer?
Yeah.
Investigator Deputy
He's the bailiff today.
Summers.
Has returned the subpoena to the defendant. Who's your next witness?
Deputy Summers, Jared Summers.
All right, is Deputy Jared Summers present?
He is, Your Honor.
All right, so let's recall the jurors. Thank you. For the record, the jurors have returned to the jury box, and Mr. Yohn was calling his next witness on behalf of the defense, Jared Summers. You can have Jared Summers. You come forward to the deputy circuit clerk and raise your right hand. She'll swear you in.
You do solemnly swear that the testimony you may give in the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Over here to my right, the witness stand, please. Mr. Yohn, when you're ready with your questions.
Mr. Summers, can you state your name and badge number?
Jared Summers, Sam 31.
And you're in an occupation with Adams County Sheriff's Department, correct?
Yes.
And what do you do?
I'm assigned to the West Central Illinois Drug Task Force and also the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force.
And you were working on the night of November 9th of 2021, correct?
Yes.
And can you relate to us a bit of the events that occurred that night?
I got a call from Sergeant McMahon. He told me that we had an incident, and I arrived to the scene.
And what scene was that?
To down on
Right.
North Bottom Road to the scene that we're here for.
And can you explain briefly what that scene was in reference to?
Sergeant McMahon told me it was in reference to a home invasion and to get there. I was off duty at the time, so I responded as fast as I could.
And arriving there, do you remember approximately what time you arrived?
I believe it was a little after 7 p.m.
And upon arriving there, could you go in depth on what you proceeded to do after arriving?
Sergeant McMahon advised me that a whitish or silver Toyota was stolen from the residence, and he asked me to go look for surveillance cameras and to see if we saw where the Toyota went.
And you obviously talked to Sergeant McMahon there at the scene outside your vehicle, correct?
Yes.
And where was that at in reference to the scene?
I don't remember, in the driveway somewhere.
And was there any other officers there at that time?
Yes.
Could you recollect who?
I remember Investigator Shoney, Investigator Miller, Sergeant McMahon, Sergeant Lohmeyer, and Deputy Bowden.
And you state Deputy Miller was there?
Investigator Miller, yes.
Investigator Miller. You didn't see any other persons, citizens of the community?
There was towards the garage. I saw some other people, don't know who they were. I wasn't up close to the house.
Have you ever had any happenstances or been around the husband, Mr. Timothy Schmidt?
No,
You do not know him.
no.
And have you ever met the victim or declarant, in this case, CL?
No,
And you did not see her that night either?
no.
And, so you didn't enter the scene?
Nope, I was just basically at the driveway for 5 minutes, if that.
And then you proceeded to canvass the area for possible camera sightings of defendant or the stolen vehicle, correct?
Yes.
Could you relate to us, after canvassing the local area, what you did after that?
Didn't find any surveillance cameras. I believe I went back to the scene very briefly. Sergeant Command advised me possible suspects of the defendant and Karen Blackledge. So I went back to the sheriff's office and started digging into them.
You, after starting to dig into possible suspects, as you state, can you further proceed into what you did after that?
Looked in our database and figured out basically ties of where they frequent, if they have ties from Quincy, just anywhere like that. And I came that they had ties in Springfield.
And further on, if you would.
That's all I did.
And that concluded your night.
At that point, no.
Anything else in reference to the case here at hand?
Later on, when the investigators got back to the sheriff's office, we wrote a probable cause report and then got a hold of Mr. Jones and advised him of the situation and then met him the next morning.
You didn't go in search of, or were you given any other information during that time in reference to the suspects?
Yes, I did. When I was doing the searching on our database, I realized that Karen Blackledge was a possible suspect in a vehicle theft earlier that day.
And you proceeded to do what after that?
I got a hold of the Quincy Police Department officer that handled that. He told me about it, and I watched surveillance cameras of the incident.
And in the surveillance cameras, can you relay what you saw?
I saw a black female, which I knew to be Karen Blackledge. She went up to, it was at Instant Replay. She went up to Instant Replay's front door and then walked to the truck, got in the truck, and drove away.
And Karen Blackledge is the only one you saw?
Yes.
How much of that camera footage did you review?
I don't know.
Enough to tell that it was only her, correct?
Yes.
And you were obviously given this camera footage later on after checking the database for information. Were you relayed approximately when that vehicle, I believe it was a GMC, a turquoise blue GMC, was stolen from Instant Replay?
It was in the morning, I believe, between 10 to noon.
Did you get a call in about suspects being cited?
Yes.
And where were they cited?
The Toyota was cited at Hannibal gas station. Hannibal Police Department tried to stop that vehicle, and that vehicle fled from them. And then later on, I don't remember what road, but Illinois State Police also observed the vehicle, and the vehicle fled from them also after trying to conduct a traffic stop.
And upon trying to conduct that traffic stop in Illinois, do you remember approximately what time these occurrences were?
No.
Was it later in the night, or?
I was still working, so I don't know when it was.
What time did you quit work that night?
I do not know.
Would it have been after 8 p.m.?
Yes.
So that's approximately 2.5, maybe even 3 hours after the occurrence.
I guess I got on the scene a little after 7, so that's what I remember.
And do you have any knowledge as to when this alleged crime at 4300 Bottom Road happened?
I'm not for sure.
And were you ever able to, excuse me, I apologize. You did state that vehicle theft was from earlier in the day, true?
From that day, yes.
And based on your review of that video, can you tell us what the description of that black female was, what she may have been wearing?
I don't remember the description. Remember it was a black female. When I looked at the surveillance, I knew it was Karen Blackledge.
You could reference to the color maybe of the clothing or?
I haven't seen the video in close to 2 years, so no, I don't know.
And how did she appear to be in that video? You worked obviously in drug task force. And you've known Karen for quite some time. How did she appear to be in that video?
I don't remember. I just remember her walking towards the door, and then walking back to the vehicle and leaving in it.
You state that you didn't see the defendant myself in that video. Would it be possible that he wasn't even present?
I don't know.
And Mr. Summers, onto the Phillips 66 video, were you able to see that?
I don't remember if I looked at it or not.
Okay, so was he a thing with Blackledge, or were they just partners in crime? That's my question.
Have you since been given any other
Let's get to the real
information
issues here.
on this alleged criminal act?
What do you mean?
Any details as to what happened? I understand you work in law enforcement. Is there a possibility you've talked to others concerning this act and could shed some light on it?
I'm going to object at this point, Your Honor. If he's asking for what somebody else has told him about this act, that would be hearsay.
Sustained, you can rephrase the question.
The sightings of defendants, I'm going to change the line of question completely. The sightings of defendants in the car, the white Toyota Avalon, they were hours later, you stated after 8 o'clock, correct?
That would be my guess, yes.
Do you know approximately how long it takes to get from Quincy, Illinois to Hannibal?
I would say 30 minutes, 35 minutes.
So if this alleged crime happened at 5:28, which you're not sure, I've just given you knowledge of, and suspects departed around 6 p.m., that would leave enough time for one to change clothes, maybe take a shower, make it to Hannibal. Maybe make it to Hannibal.
Objection leading.
Sustained.
2 hours would be enough to make it to Hannibal, correct?
Yes.
Deputy Summers, I'd like to talk about the scene of the arrest.
I'm going to object, Your Honor. The witness said he was never at the scene of the arrest. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Scene of the arrest. I withdraw my objection.
Your Deputy Summers, Investigator Summers. As I stated, I'd like to talk about the scene of the arrest. You and other officers were notified that the defendant, myself, and alleged co-defendant were arrested in Springfield, Illinois, correct?
Correct.
And You traveled to Springfield, Illinois, true?
Yes,
You also traveled with other officers.
yes.
Could you state who you traveled with?
I rode with Sergeant McMahon and Investigator Yohn and Investigator Miller rode with each other.
And do you recall approximately what time you left for Springfield?
I don't know.
Shortly after the defendant was taken into custody is when we left.
And this was the following day, correct?
Yes,
On the 10th of November.
yes,
And officers of the U.S. Marshal Service gathered info, which you're also part of, true?
yes.
And they gathered info on the defendant and found that he and Blackledge were potentially at 906 East Cornell, true?
I'm not sure the exact address, but I believe so.
And that was, do you recall who provided that information?
We knew the defendant was at Jamal's store the day prior. TFO Von Barron, who's works with the U.S. Marshals, spoke to the defendant's ex-girlfriend. She stated if he was in Springfield, he would be at Randy Young's residence, which is approximately 0.7 miles from Jamal's.
So you're familiar with the area then?
Yes.
And upon arriving to Springfield, what did you proceed to do?
I went to the scene on where the defendant was apprehended.
And upon arriving to that scene, obviously the defendant was already in custody at the local police station, correct?
Correct.
And at that scene, what did you observe first entering the scene?
Well, first entering was an unrelated incident to this case that we believe, but I'm not for sure.
He's going to prison.
And then later I spoke to a detective with Springfield Police Department, and she kind of showed me the area of where the defendant was apprehended.
And could you repeat that again about the unrelated incident you stated?
There was a vehicle there that there was a dead body in the alley where the defendant was apprehended, and that's what it is.
And that was approximately a property and a half over in a public alleyway, correct?
Yeah.
And you stated that it's unrelated to the defendant myself?
I'm not for sure, but I that's from my understanding, yes.
Very big coincidence, true?
Yeah.
One wouldn't expect to be looking for someone in these matters and come across.
Probably just going to be an
in close
enhancement,
proximity like that, would that?
aggravating factor.
Well, what's the question?
If you were looking for a suspect such as myself for these criminal acts, you wouldn't expect a coincidence such as that being that close to the scene of arrest.
I mean, doing this job since 2012, I think anything's possible.
Anything's possible, but it's a very big coincidence, true?
Anything's possible, yes.
You were shown around the scene by Springfield Police, correct?
Yes.
And what did he show you outside of the coincidence? What did he show you in reference to the scene?
Next to an RV, he just kind of showed me around. I do remember on a chair that there was a purse that the defendant was wearing during he was apprehended.
And can you speak on any procedure you took while there at that time, or did you just observe by eyesight?
I observed. I was more of just listening to Sergeant McMahon and what he wanted me to do at that time.
And in reference to that purse on the chair, were you able to, at that time, identify anything in that purse?
At that time, no.
But later,
In your report, you state that would give you one moment. You state that Sergeant Henson showed us around the scene. And while Sergeant Henson was showing us the scene, we observed in plain view a chair which was outside the purse Yohn was wearing. Correct?
Yeah.
And then you went and applied for a search warrant?
Investigator Shoney did.
Did you notice that the purse didn't match the
You
shoes?
didn't identify or see anything on that chair other than the purse, Drew?
I don't remember if it was at that time, but I do remember what was in the purse. I'm not sure if I remember. It was after we came back to the place, to the residence, or at that moment. But
And what was in the purse?
in the purse, there was U.S. currency, jewelry, a voter's ID card with Christina Lohman's name on it, and I believe the Toyota keys, and then also checks from ABS to Christina Lohman.
And that concluded the items in the purse.
I believe so, yes.
Debbie Summers,
It was all kinds of
I want to jump
incriminating.
over to processing a scene quickly. When you process a scene, you take pictures, correct?
Yes.
And how do you do that procedure? Do you place hands on items before you take the pictures, or do you take the pictures first?
So we take overall pictures of the whole scene, everything from top to bottom. We take a whole scene picture, and then after those pictures are taken, then we start handling that evidence.
And you stated you saw the purse with voters' registration cards, cash, jewelry, checks. And it was very obviously in plain view, just as this computer is here today, correct?
I don't remember, but
It's seated right on a chair.
from my remembrance, it was on the chair.
And then you proceeded to, I believe, the police station, and Officer Shoney applied for a search warrant.
Yes.
And then after that, what did you all do?
Sergeant McMahon, Investigator Shoney, and myself went back to the scene and executed the search warrant.
Deputy Summers, are you aware of a hijacking, or what could be considered a hijacking, that I believe may have taken place on October 19th, 20th, sometime around there, outside of town?
No.
I'm having a hard time. I'd like to inquire as to when you went back to the scene and did the search.
After the search warrant was signed from a Sangamon County judge, we went back to the scene.
And you proceeded to search, and did you search the purse?
I don't remember.
Here in your report, it states verbatim, during the search warrant outside the RV's doors, we observed the purse that was on Yohn. Inside the purse, there was a large amount of U.S. currency, numerous pieces of jewelry, checks from ABS that had Tina Lohman's name written on it, keys to the stolen Toyota, and Adams County voters registration card with Christine Lohman's name on it. And then you go on. Also, in a suitcase, we found a radar detector and court documents with Yohn's name on them. This is page 7 of 9 of your supplemental report. It is 0366 defense copy.
Yeah, okay. That sounds
Would
about
you
right.
know who placed a pill bottle next to that purse, directly next to that purse?
No.
That chair?
No.
But it wasn't there in the beginning, was it?
I do not remember.
And would you relate to us what you did after this? And I would ask that you please go into detail, timing, actions taken, and such.
Judge, objection, calls for a narrative, compound question.
Would you relate to us?
Objection.
Would you relate to us what you did after that point?
Objection, calls for a narrative.
What did you
Sustain the
receive?
objection for the same grounds.
What did you do
After we did executed the search warrant,
after you initially started the search warrant?
Objection still calls for a narrative, Your Honor. We need something more specific for this witness to answer the question.
Can you go into detail the procedure of the search?
we searched the outside and inside the RV and took evidence.
And do you recall what evidence you took?
The items on the chair, inside the RV. I believe we found some more U.S. currency, a gold watch, a purse, and I believe an ID, but I don't remember what ID that was.
And Deputy Summers, which of you took the picture?
I know I didn't. I don't know who did.
Do you recall a Burlington receipt?
Like,
A Burlington department store receipt?
no.
And items recovered from Yohn and Blackledge. That wouldn't be stuff you found at the scene, would it? That would be things you found on a person, correct?
The items,
Items recovered from Yohn and Blackledge,
I mean, they were at the scene of where the defendant was apprehended.
but they would be different than what's recovered on a person.
I don't understand your question.
Items recovered from a defendant. If a defendant's found at a scene and then he is taken to a police station and you later come up to search the scene, the items found on the person at the police station would be different than the items found at the scene, correct?
Well, the items at the scene would stay at the scene, and the items on the items on a defendant would, I don't know what they did with them.
They went to the police department. Do you recall what kind of cell phone you have as far as your department cell phone?
It's an iPhone.
And do you remember the brand the model?
At that time, I have a new one now. I don't remember what brand we had then.
And did you observe a rosary on scene?
Not that I remember.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Any questions?
No, Your Honor. We'd ask that he be released from the people's subpoena.
Oh, good
Did you recall
Lord.
this witness, Mr. Yohn?
Potentially, Your Honor.
We'd ask that he be released from our subpoena at least, Your Honor.
All right, we're releasing from the people's subpoena this time. Any further witness, Mr. Yohn?
Your Honor, I do, however, I'm not ready for them yet. I need to inquire with Sheriff Wagner and Massachusetts. Also, I need to take up an issue of very high relevance
High
concerning
relevant.
this case is, it would have to be outside the jury. It's, very important, Your Honor. It's in reference to evidence, items,
Oh,
and
goody.
pictures.
Well, Mr. Yohn, if we're going to take it up outside the hearing of the jury, let's wait and we'll do so outside the hearing of the jury. They
There
are
we
still
go.
here. And so we will adjourn for the day.
I could be wrong, but I'm told some,
Admonish the jury as
there's
you
some
have
good
heard
hijinks
repeatedly
here.
before, but I need to do it every time just to remind you. We will now be in recess for the evening. You may go about your normal affairs but you must not discuss this case with anyone, including family members, friends, or your fellow jurors. As I told you at the beginning of this case, your job as jurors is extremely important. Your decision on your verdict is to be based only upon the evidence that you see and hear in this courtroom and the instructions of law that I will give you. Therefore, to remain fair and impartial, you must refrain from doing the following things until you are discharged from service on this case. You must not converse with anyone on any subject connected with this case. You must not read or listen to anything outside of the court proceedings, including any outside comments or news accounts of this case. You must not discuss among yourselves any subject connected with the trial or form any opinion on the cause until you start your deliberation on your verdict. You must not view or go to the place where the offense was allegedly committed. If you hear or observe anything about this case outside this courtroom, whether inadvertently or otherwise, you must immediately inform me at the beginning of our next session. Do not discuss any of these things with your fellow jurors at any time. You are to report tomorrow in time to start again promptly at 9 a.m. to continue your jury service in this case. So I thank you for your patience and time today, and we'll see you back tomorrow at 9 a.m.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise.
And you're to hit like and subscribe. I'll talk with Mike.
Your Honor, last night I noticed some very disturbing things. And these are in reference to sexual assault pictures. Judge, I believe there needs to be something done about these sexual assault pictures. The state's attorney stated that I've seen them several times. Your Honor, I've seen different pictures at least 2 different times. And the ones that were presented yesterday were not of Christine Loman. I don't care who testified of them. There were a couple that I am for sure without a doubt that were not Christine Loman.
Which pictures, Mr. Yohn? Let's identify them for the record. Do you have the people's exhibits numbers that we can reference for the record? So
No,
we get
Your
a clear
Honor.
record.
Judge, we can help with that.
All right. If you can help out, speed things along, please do so.
Judge, the photos in question are, I believe, People's 31 and People's 32.
Your Honor, there was, the first time I observed these, there were several more than this. And they were completely different than what we viewed yesterday. I would suggest potentially the courts, with all attorneys involved, do an in-camera session or something to determine this. Because I have pictures, not of the genital area from the sex assault exam, but I have pictures here that are completely different than what one has showed on this screen here. There's no reason they should be completely different, Your Honor. I think irrelevant is something that needs to be addressed and something needs to be done about it. Your Honor, I also have other pictures, and though they may be disturbing, I have other pictures from a later time that also show that these aren't from the same person. There's specific issues with that area that prove this. And I'm not going to state them out loud because I don't want to offend anybody here today. But
Mr. Jones, care to respond to the allegation?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm dumbfounded. I'll say that. I'll start with that. One, Jacqueline Oglesby testified in open court that the photographs were photographs that she took, specifically people's 31 and 32 were photographs of the victim. Two, the defendant had every opportunity to cross-examine her on that, and he did not do that. They were admitted into evidence. And again, Jacqueline Oglesby, under oath, said they were of the victim in this case. Three, the defendant has seen those photos numerous times. We did not provide him copies of them because of the sensitive nature. We've addressed that with the court and with this defendant multiple times. He's asked to see them multiple times, and each time Ms. Keck and I have gone down to the jail or gone over to the jail and shown him those photos and given him ample time to look at those photos. Are there more photos of her genitalia? Absolutely. We chose to use 2 because of the graphic nature of them. So he's right, there are more. We didn't use any more than the 2 that we used because of the graphic nature of them. That was our choice as trial strategy. That doesn't mean that they aren't of her, especially when the court has found the appropriate foundation has been laid and a witness testified as to that foundation. I don't know what the defendant is trying to do here now, Your Honor, but frankly, it's not the right time, it's not the right place, and I'll stop there.
All right, so Mr. Yohn, having heard the arguments of yourself and the state, the time to have objected to anything about People's Exhibits number 31 and number 32 was when the witness Oglesby was testifying, and she did testify to the foundation, identified those photographs of those as the photographs she took of CL, of the injuries resulting from the sexual assault, as well as the photographs were identified by Dr. Kagumba as the photographs she had reviewed of the initial injuries and then basically that were healing of that sexual assault. And so, quite frankly, the water's run under the bridge already, Mr. Yohn, and so there's nothing I can do about that. They're admitted without your objection and will remain admitted without your objection.
I have not been disclosed in photos, as you say.
And again, Mr. Yohn, the time to have objected even on that grounds passed when those witnesses were here to testify, and you did not object to those being admitted. It's too late.
Because I did not know, Your Honor, I have been given.
You were in the courtroom, sir.
I have not seen. All
right, I ruled. You were in the courtroom during the testimony and with the exhibits. They're admitted. Any other issue, Mr. Yohn?
Thank you.
Interviewing witnesses, Your Honor.
It's the same answer I had for you yesterday, sir.
And we spoke on that today, and
I mean, that last thing is just particularly disgusting to me because there's no basis for it whatsoever. And I just think he wants to make things awkward and nasty for everybody because of the sensitive nature of the photos involved. I see no other motive for it.
determined that we would proceed further into that.
What were we proceeding further into?
Well, I'd indicated, Your Honor, that this morning I'd indicated that I was willing to go speak with Ms. Blockledge again and to inquire whether or not she would do that. Frankly, I'm not sure that I'm in the mood to do that, but I will still do that because I don't want this defendant to feel like he's being treated unfairly.
All right. So Mr. Jones will likely be accompanied by Ms. Keck as well as a law enforcement officer to visit with Ms. Blackledge to see if she's changed her mind from last evening and wishes to speak with you or not. And then they'll facilitate that if she does so desire.
We will, Your Honor.
I doubt she will, but I'd like to see her testify. That'd be interesting.
People can say anything, and people can be believed, as long as there's a foundation, true.
And Mr. Jones and Ms. Keck are officers of this court, sir. And so they have a ethical obligation as officers of the court to be truthful with this court. And we had testimony this morning to back up the representations that were made.
Yes, sir.
That's about the best I can do, sir. I'm not going to go ask her because I'm not a witness in this case. I've got to be the judge. Okay? Anything else, Mr. Yohn?
No, Your Honor.
Anything for the people?
Yes, Your Honor. As far as tomorrow,
if the defendant is going to call witnesses, we would like to know who they are so that we can help facilitate them being in court so we don't deal with the same issue that we've dealt with today. I would also point out that two of the witnesses that the defendant indicated he was likely to call, and one that he wanted to recall, were Brian Curran and Kelsey Miller. Both those individuals are under our subpoena. They are not under a subpoena from the defendant. I want to be clear on that. They are only available tomorrow if the defendant wants to call them. Once tomorrow runs, they are not available next week. And again, they are only under the people's subpoena.
And that was Kelsey Miller, correct?
Kelsey Miller and Brian Curran.
I don't want to call Brian Kern. He has no
So-
issues.
If we can confirm that we can release Brian Curran from his subpoena, I'll do that. And then that just leaves Kelsey Miller.
Your Honor, we can release Brian Kern. Brian Kern has nothing to do with this case.
All right, so Brian Curran can be released from the state subpoena to be a witness in this case. And as far as Kelsey Miller, Mr. Yohn, are you going to want her available to testify?
Tomorrow afternoon, Judge.
We will have her here and available. The state will make an effort to make her here and available tomorrow.
We will do that, Your Honor. Then finally, Your Honor, Heidi Young and Ilsa Terrell and Tim Schmidt, because the defendant also indicated he may want to recall those people. So if he wants them here, if he wants to give me a time, I will make sure that those individuals are available.
Mr. Yohn, do you wish to call Heidi Young as a witness?
Yes, that should be brief.
It's just yes or no, but what time? You want it first thing in the morning or afternoon?
Early afternoon.
And then Ilsa Terrell, you want to call her as a witness?
Before, or excuse me, we could move Heidi up a bit, or either or, vice versa. But I prefer to do Kelsey Miller last.
All right, and Timothy Schmidt, are you wishing to call him as a witness?
Potentially in the morning, Judge.
I will have Mr. Schmidt here in the morning. I will have Kelsey Miller here at 12:30, 1 o'clock. Does he want to give me a time for Heidi Young and Ilsa Terrell?
I would suggest Ms. Young and Terrell also be here in the morning. I'm not going to be taking these breaks waiting for witnesses to be available. I want them lined up and ready to go.
Yes, sir.
Next witness.
And if there are any other witnesses he wants tomorrow.
Mr. Yohn, are you wanting the state's assistance in gathering or trying to get other witnesses here?
I would think that them may take up most of the day.
Well, we're going to fill the day, sir, so any other witness?
Jake McMahon.
He doesn't have a subpoena for the defendant.
We will have Officer or Sergeant McMahon here in the morning as well.
Any other witness, Mr. Young?
Now for tomorrow, Your Honor, no. I believe them should.
All right, and again, I expect to fill the day, so if we come up on a 1:30 again with no witnesses, I mean, you're going to either fill the time or we're going to be adjourned and taking up instructions to the jury. So make sure we've got enough people to fill the day, sir.
I guess we can throw Dr. Finster on this.
Dr. Finster has not been properly served with a subpoena, Your Honor.
He's our subpoena, but he's not available this week.
He's not available this
He
week.
only has a subpoena from us.
Kevin Douglas.
Does he have a subpoena?
I'm not sure if Kevin Douglas has been subpoenaed by the defense.
Well, we've seen the subpoena work.
He's got our subpoena. Let's see what he gave here. I'll try. He's got our subpoena.
He just sends blank subpoenas. No reference to date or time.
Has Douglas been issued a subpoena, Mr. Young?
No, not on my behalf. I didn't.
Well, there's that.
Have to, since he's already been added to the list.
Again,
I can try to have him here, but he's not under subpoena, so there's not much I can do, but I will attempt to have Officer Douglas here.
would be beneficial. Anyone else, Mr. Yohn?
I did.
All right. Anything else for the people?
No, Your Honor.
We will be adjourned. It is now 3:30 in the afternoon. See you all back here shortly before 9 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Well, there you have it. That was day 3. There have been 4 days of this trial. In one weekend, we got through 3 of them. We're going to get through number 4 too. Later this afternoon. I don't know. 3, 4, 5, something like that. I haven't figured it out. I have to go get some sunshine on me. I have to go get some sunshine and get some endorphins. And then I will be back. And we're going to deal with Friday. Then we're going to be up to speed and ready to roll. Because I'm told, I don't know yet. I haven't seen. I'm watching this live with you guys. It's not live; it's recorded. But I haven't seen this stuff, so I'm learning as I go. Not much. Oh, good Lord! Thank you all for coming out. We are going to be up to speed right here. I felt obligated. We got a crazy pro se in Illinois. Being the, Law Talk with Mike from Chicago, I pretty much have to do that. I think there's a statute or something requiring me to do that. So yeah, he's awful. But I want to get up to speed with this because I suspect since the state's arrested, he's got some witnesses. It's, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what happens. But what I have seen, just at least in the comments, is that he's talking about testifying on Monday. So let's get up to speed so we're ready for the debacle that is him taking the stand in his own defense. Then we'll have a closing. And I would think that he would go, that would be near the end if he's taking the stand. Well, most of this seems to be a delay tactic. I don't know. The last all today was calling officers and basically having them reiterate the state's case while being very consistent and annoyed. Well done. All right. Thank y'all for coming out. I will see y'all soon, namely this afternoon or early evening. All right. See ya.